Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap from behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is my co-host, Fox Trevize. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. How you doing today?
Doing fantastic. And also with us is Krieg.
Great.
Hello, inshallah, Habibis.
Yes.
Well, so it's great to have you on the show for today because it's a mostly military topics. Also, the complete collapse of the government, but you know that and the military.
Yeah, Krieg, do you want to give a little introduction about yourself? And yeah, it's been a little while since you've been on the show here. I'm sure some people remember you, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my friends. I am Krieg Blackpaw. I give my shitty butthole opinions on Twitter. I am a small L libertarian. I was in the military, United States Army for 4 years and some change. I don't really count the reserve time. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2012. Spent time there teaching Afghan nationals how to set up fiber optic networks. That was fun. We didn't teach them anything. But yeah, so that's me.
They're using that fiber optic training a lot today, are they?
Simple network infrastructure was impossible, just impossible.
Oof. Well,
I
having
mean, so
go ahead, Dyer.
I'd say in general, teaching someone or a group of people who are illiterate, are not loyal to the cause, don't care what you're teaching them, are only there because they were going to get paid, it's probably very hard to get them to learn anything.
Having gone through network training myself, most people don't understand how they work anyways, so I imagine that people who up until very recently did not have computers probably can't even conceive of what the hell a network is, so I'm sure that was very difficult.
Yeah. They can't even fire a gun straight.
or do jumping jacks properly.
Oh god, the jumping jacks. Okay, well, we obviously will be talking a lot about a certain Stan, although I believe it's no longer called Afghanistan, the location formerly known as Afghanistan, in a little bit here, which is one of the main reasons why we invited Krieg on the show to share his valuable insights, along with Dyer, since I did not deploy like these guys did. I'm sure that their insights will be very valuable to the show. But before that, we do have a few other stories we wanted to get through rather quickly. But hopefully you guys are strapped in and ready to go, because this is going to be a long show.
Yep.
Alrighty. Our
Let's get right
first
into it.
story is story B. As Dyer and I do not know how to organize show notes. B is for bomb threat, which was a false flag. So we had yesterday, or was it the day before? When was the 19th? Was that yesterday or the day before? That was 2 days ago. So Thursday, Floyd Ray Raspberry. Oh God, his name was Floyd. That's very it's very
He's the one that survived.
Coincidental. Very coincidental. Okay, so on August 19th, last Thursday, Floyd Ray Raspberry, 49 years old, a mentally ill man from Cleveland, drove himself, allegedly, to D.C. with what he believed was an explosive device in the back of his pickup. Floyd posted threats online showing exactly where he was parked outside the Library of Congress. Let's see here. The police responded and arrested him without incident. 100% of the left-wing media sources that reported on this story noted that Floyd was a Trump supporter and that he criticized Biden. This event was used as a reminder of the Democrat narrative that Trump supporters are a true threat to America. The reporting from the left left a lot of things out that was publicly available to anybody who had the curiosity to go find it. When you add in the publicly available information about Floyd Ray Rosberry, you get a very different story. So let's start with the motive.
Yes, let's start with motive. So most of the sources stated that Floyd was his motives were either unknown or they heavily implied that his motives were political opposition to Biden. So he wanted to blow up the Library of Congress because he's a terrorist, a conservative terrorist, basically, that's what they're implying. Saying either of those things, either that you don't know his motive or that it's because he's just a conservative, is a lie, because we actually know exactly what his motive was, because he posted all of it on a live stream on Facebook. So, which was then cut up into little bits and put onto Twitter. So even right now, everything he was thinking and doing was available on video for us to look at. So saying that it's unknown is dishonest. These sources were not linked. The videos were not linked in those news sources that we were reading. For some reason, they didn't want you to see what this guy was actually saying at the time. In these videos, he explained that he was given his bomb, quote unquote bomb, by a retired military guy, and that he believed he was part of a team of people who planned and executed the bomb attack. He believed he was one of 5 people with identical bombs, all targeting the Capitol at different locations on that day at that time, and that he was chosen out of the 5 in the team to be the one who would make these videos and make the threats and make the demands. Here are a few of the clips from that live stream.
Your military expertise, the ones that was trained, one that trained the people that's in the military now. He made this. He didn't have but 2 legs, but he said he knows it works, because he's used them many a time.
So, okay, so he's saying that some military guy gave him a bomb, that he's pretty sure it works. It's a little interesting. Again, if you kind of notice the cadence of his voice and his speaking mannerisms, he doesn't seem to be really all there with it. But we'll continue on. So as he said in subsequent clips, he believed someone else would set off the bomb at the right time after he planted it. He believes that he was picked to be sacrificed by a team of elite military folks. So it's interesting. Is that what this other clip is?
Yes.
No control over it. Your military expertise, the ones that was trained, one that
Oh, is it like the next one, maybe?
This is the second clip.
Do you think if I got the balls to come up here, you think these little balls here, they some hamstringers out here. I just got chose for the job.
What did he say? He said, I just got chose for the job. Okay.
Yeah,
so
he said that.
So he's not out there saying like, oh, I'm doing this because, Biden stole the election. He's saying, I don't know, I'm a big dummy. Some smart military guys pulled me over. They chose me to serve my country, and here I am. Basically,
Exactly. He's saying, I'm unskilled. I'm not very smart. I'm not the one planning this. There's the A stringers out there, the skilled expert guys, and they picked me for this job. So Floyd definitely appears to be mentally unstable. His ex-wife and his lawyer both have stated that he has mental issues that he's been struggling with, and that he is clinically diagnosed with something, and I believe that. But at no point in the very long video does he appear to see things or people that do not exist and talk to them or interact with them. That is a hell of a lot of a complicated story that he's saying, that he was recruited by a group of people and that they handed him a device and told him to show up at this day and to make demands, to make threats over the phone. It seems like a very complicated thing. for you to hallucinate. And that's definitely possible. But if you are at that level that you're hallucinating that detailed and so disassociated from yourself that you would build a bomb and then think that someone else handed it to you, that you did not make it yourself, that kind of disassociation is crippling. And it'd be hard for him to drive and navigate a city without interacting with other fake things, talking to other fake people. So it is a little hard for me to believe that he is so functional while still able to completely, of whole cloth, create that story without any outside input. I do believe he is mentally ill. I think that what would be required for him to be so mentally ill to make up this entire story would require that he be unable to do what he did on this video.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing this being like kind of like how you see schizophrenia portrayed in the movies. You got like Splits or Splice, I think it was, where you have these kind of elaborate fantasy scenes, and it's like, okay, you know, oh, it was really just he was crazy the whole time. You see that play out in movies and in books and stuff like that. It makes an interesting narrative, but it doesn't really work like that in real life. And in real life, as Dyer said, having those extremely complex hallucinations makes you unable to carry out this kind of level of complexity of tasks and that sort of stuff.
Right. There's also the possibility that the FBI, which has planted agents in conservative groups, chat rooms, and organizations, we know they do that. It's possible the FBI may have picked him out as a patsy for their most recent false flag, because we know they have. You're talking about an example with the Whitmer case. We know they do this.
Yes, it's been beyond proven at this point that the FBI was heavily involved in the Whitmer kidnapping, to the point where there was 12 FBI agents and a group of 18 potential kidnappers for the Whitmer case. We have seen a lot of evidence that FBI agents were some of the primary antagonists on January 6th. Which is interesting that the January 6th report just came out that there was no insurrection, there was no planning, which we'll get to that in a little bit here. But, you know, maybe it was a different agency, maybe it was somebody else, but it does currently statistically, if you look at the attacks on the country, it's either Antifa, BLM, or the FBI. I don't know what this guy was up to, what he's doing, but it is very obviously, from watching some of these videos here, that he's not some kind of right-wing MAGA extremist or anything like that. It doesn't appear that he's got a political motive. It appears that he feels like he was specially chosen to serve his country by a bunch of people that he respects, who are either real or posing as military. And maybe it was an elaborate fantasy he had, but it appears that this is what his motivation was to serve his country for these military guys that gave him this bomb. Now, who were those people? I don't know. But it doesn't appear that this was just Biden man bad, I'm pissed about the election, I don't like what's going on in Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera. No, he's not saying anything in here about political motives. It's just, these military people came by and asked me to do this, so I'm going to do this.
Someone with his grasp on reality might still, even though he can't make up a story like this and still be functional, he might still be unstable enough to be easily manipulated by someone into, being a patsy for the FBI. Yeah. They may have seen him as being an easy target of someone that they could manipulate to make him go do something to create that false flag.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, we just kind of reminded you guys about the previous FBI involvements in other, I guess I'll call them false flag terror plots, because what else would they be? But let's see here. So you've got FBI approaching their marks, making claims to be groups of elite military veterans. We brought that up a few weeks ago when we went over the updates on the Whitmer story, where we found out that many of the FBI agents that were present at the planning sessions that were encouraging the 3 or 4 civilians that were actually there, that were driving them around, that were training them, telling them what to do, giving them tactics. We know from public records that a lot of those FBI agents were former military, which makes sense because that's usually an easy retirement plan for military, is that you retire into agency life. So that makes sense. It all makes sense. So if he was saying this sounds like a very similar story to the Whitmer case, where they were approached by people who were military veterans, and then used that kind of elite status and this kind of motivation for patriotism to convince patsies to go do something that they otherwise would not have done. Discovery in the Whitmer kidnapping case has revealed that the majority of the members and all of the principal members involved in the plot were FBI agents, and that the agents were told to lie to investigators and to purge their communications. Yes, we've had a more recent update that it was found text messages between the various FBI informants involved in the Whitmer case that they should delete their text messages, which clearly, now that
one of them didn't.
One of them did not do that, apparently. So I know that this sounds like real conspiratorial, like, oh, are we watching Alex Jones right now? Like, no, I think that we've seen a lot of evidence we've seen a lot of proof of previous FBI involvement in trying to create false flag narratives about conservatives. This appears to be just such a case. It has that stink to it.
I'm sorry, Fox. When you establish a trend where we know for sure that you have done this, and you did it so easily, like drinking water or breathing, like it wasn't something special. It is something that normal operation that has evolved this way, right? Then at a certain point, we have to say you need to prove this wasn't you, because you've already established this is how you operate. So when it seems like the same thing, the way we already know you operate, we are going to assume until you can prove otherwise. Now, let's talk about that quote-unquote bomb of his. The device that Floyd claims he was given was a completely inert device made to look convincingly like an explosive device filled with shrapnel. The point of it actually being filled in the center with what was supposed to be an explosive powder, but wasn't.
Yeah, it looks like it's got like Play-Doh or something on it, which I'm guessing is supposed to be modeled after C4.
I think that they did a lot of things that they tried to put it on there to make it look like convincing. So when they described to him, oh, that thing you hear rattling around, which is bolts inside, well, that's the shrapnel, the ball bearings we put in there. It wasn't ball bearings, it was bolts. This center charge we're putting in, this is made of the such and such chemical, but it's really not that. This putty we're putting on top, this is a C4 to start the explosion, but it's not really was just putty, right?
Yeah. What do you got any thoughts on this, Krieg? Do you think we're crazy? What do you think about this?
Well, I think the difficult part, I think for me, getting older and realizing, now all of these things coming around about how our trusted institutions, our government agencies that we thought were protecting us all throughout the war on terror, and we're slowly finding out how they now the target not being Islamic terrorists, but being political opposition coming after us. We're also finding out about how they fabricated things during the war on terror in order to increase their own funding, to maintain control. And, the whole discussion that you guys had about the FBI having a track record of fabricating incidents for whatever motive or means. There's an excellent book out. It came out in 2013. It's called The Terror Factory: Inside the FBI's Manufactured War on Terrorism. And it basically breaks down and talks about how even back then, the FBI was, going into Muslim communities and, you'd have one guy who was their target, and there would be 4 or 5 FBI quote unquote informants who would all convince this guy to work towards carrying out a plot or recruiting people for various terrorist organizations and trying to get him to do more so that they can then sweep in, catch him and say, oh, look, we did the thing. We deserve more funding. And so it's not a new thing at all.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we also know they do things for political expediency, right? So the whole Russian collusion thing was made up by the FBI with the intent of getting a political goal of either removing Trump or making it so he was unable to do anything while he was in office. And they were very successful, but we know now that it was completely false from the very beginning, that they had pushed the story and pushed it to the news media. And so if they're willing to make false flags, they're willing to take political action by lying to the American people and costing billions and billions of dollars, and investigate an innocent man and put innocent people in jail just to hurt a politician they don't like. What more would they be willing to do to you? And what other lies would they be willing to say if they're willing to go that far? Also, it's worth talking about the timing of this story. This story is a scare tactic of trying to drum up more fear about right-wing extremism, which is happening conveniently during Biden's worst failure to date. And that's not understating it. This is the worst public relations and worst failure for our nation that he's done so far as president. The completely botched withdrawal from Afghanistan has led to his record low approval rating and record high disapproval rating for Biden. And even the left-wing media has aggressively criticized him for his performance in the withdrawal. The timing of the attack, to say the least, is convenient.
Yeah. And to go along with what Krieg was saying about the book, I believe it's called The Terror Factory, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've heard some things about that, and I believe one of the kind of key parts of it was that during the investigation for the book, they found that there was like 50 or more cases right now that are tied up that basically these people were just entrapped and that they otherwise wouldn't have done it, and these cases are failing. But the FBI still gets to say, oh, we've got the numbers, and when they go to Congress and they testify, oh, we stopped X number of terror plots this year, and we need more money. And then when people like Rand Paul say, well, hold on a second, we don't really see any terror plots, why do you need so much money? And say, oh, well, you don't see them because we stopped them, that's why we need more money. And it's like, okay, well, which ones did you stop? Did you stop the ones that you yourself planned? Because we seem to see a lot that the FBI doesn't plan that seem to sneak through. We had the El Paso shooting, the Dayton shooting, the Pulse nightclub shooting. We had there was San Bernardino. We've had a lot of real terror attacks that seem to be genuinely based, and the FBI doesn't seem to be able to catch those, but they certainly catch 100% of the ones that they start. Well, they catch most of the ones that they start anyways.
Yeah. Not Fast and the Furious, though.
I'm betting that there's a few that got away there.
Exactly. Back in 2014-ish, I once naively believed the stat when the FBI said that they stopped roughly one terror plot per a day of the year. I remember that stat because I was dumbfounded, like, wow, that's important. That could have been a bunch of 9/11s that could happen every year if it wasn't for the FBI. I know better now.
Yeah, and I also want to kind of expand too on what you said earlier, Krieg. Kind of as you grew up, you had kind of this idea of the government being there to protect you, and now you're kind of becoming disillusioned with that. And I think conservatism in general is going through a real transformational period right now, where we're looking at what happened over the last 4 years with Trump and over the last 2 years with the lockdowns. And we're looking at a lot of these government agencies that are supposed to be there to protect us, and we see what they did to Trump. And it has now been case closed, proven that all of that stuff was fabricated. All the Russian collusion stuff was completely fabricated for political motives. And then we're seeing with the lockdowns, we're seeing a lot of our local and state police just so happy to trample all over constitutional rights and to follow any edict that a governor or president has, and your rights be damned. And, traditionally, conservatism has been very supportive of, thin blue line stuff and, government institutions, and, they're there to protect us. They're patriots. They're serving their country. And now that we're seeing that, oh, wow, that's almost the opposite of what a lot of these agencies are doing right now. A lot of conservatives are having kind of an existential crisis trying to realign what they think about these different organizations and how their values line up. I know that's certainly been a transformational period for me. Direwolf and I, over a year ago now, said we can no longer be back the blue. It has to be verify them back the blue. If you know your local sheriff, you know your local police department, and they're good guys, you back them all day long. If you don't know, then you need to figure out how some way of verifying. But at this point, there's been too many incidents where it is conditional back the blue. You have to verify it first.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing too is that what, you know, I'm completely dumbfounded today. You know, people who, I guess there's a lot of people who aren't as invested, as involved as you guys are, and me to some degree. But, you know, just I don't know how people can really call themselves conservative anymore at this point. I mean, the age of conservatism has pretty much ended. It's a failed ideology. It doesn't work. There's nothing left to conserve. Every major institution in this country has been completely co-opted by the leftist political machine. And we used to at least cling on. I remember being younger and, you know, when, you know, George Bush was president, talking about how, you know, oh, we still have the corporations, the companies, we still have you know, the church, we still have, you know, all these other various organizations, and we have nothing. We don't even have the church. The Pope is a communist, a full-blown communist. I mean, there's nothing left. Congratulations, you have switched roles with the liberal leftists of America. You are now the rebel child. You are now punk rock, because they have officially become the man. Everything that they swore they weren't, they've become it.
So conservatives and liberals are terms that have changed definition quite a bit because they don't have an inherent definition. Unlike libertarian, where there's actually an ideology that's an actual set of principles that meets that goes with that term, or Marxism, there's an ideology built around it that is it's somewhat the same because that's what the word came from. Whereas conservative, it's not really a hard, fast set of principles and ideology, just like liberalism.
It's kind of like describing Europeans as white, where it's like, okay, I guess maybe, but not really. It's not a very good, you know, you've got, you know, the UK, you've got the, you know, Norwegians, and you've got the Germans and the Spanish and the Filipinos. And it's like, okay, like, I guess white is a category for them, but like, I wouldn't say that it's, descriptive. It doesn't carry nearly enough information. And so conservatism at this point has kind of taken on that same ambiguity where you can call a group of people conservative, but it just doesn't retain enough information right now.
Well, what you're conserving changes over time too. So really it means it is not an inherent meaning. It is, the meaning changes based on what you're trying to conserve.
At this point, I'm trying to conserve my guns and ammo.
Right. So,
my property.
though I agree with what you're saying, it's not the. I just want to make sure we distinguish between what it is an ideology that actually has a definition, or just a term that is supposed to represent something but changes chaotically throughout the years. So we had a comment on YouTube, and they asked me about the Mockingbird Project, and it's kind of related to the story. The Mockingbird Project was something that was happening in the 60s, where the CIA was being used to spy on, wiretap, eavesdrop on the communications of journalists, with the end goal of trying to sway news broadcasts in the favor of the administration. And they had transcripts from the president, Kennedy, that were released in October of 2001, showing that they were specifically talking about and spying on journalists. And as we know from the Obama administration, they're still doing it.
Yep. Then one last bit on this story. So there was an update this week, I believe it was on Thursday. The FBI released their report on January 6th, and the FBI concluded that there was no centralized planning of January 6th. It was not an insurrection.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here, which is interesting for a couple of points. So accepting their premise that it wasn't centrally planned for a second, which I don't believe. I'll come back to that in a minute. So if it wasn't centrally planned, then it wasn't an insurrection, which means that Trump can go back on Twitter because he didn't plan an insurrection. The Nancy Pelosi's insurrection committee can immediately dissolve itself because there was no insurrection. All of the 540 and counting people that have been arrested and have been massively abused in DC jails, they can all be released because they were not a part of any kind of centralized insurrection. And Parler can go back onto Amazon because they were not part of an insurrection. There's a whole lot of things now that we know that it wasn't an insurrection that can kind of go back to normal, right? But on the flip side of that is, why did the FBI release this report? Well, we brought to you a few months ago, which was brought to us by Tucker Carlson, which was brought to us by, I think, was it Reason Magazine? I can't remember. But we know that a lot of the most violent actors on January 6th, that they were never charged. The most violent actors on January 6th were never charged, but you had people who, for simple trespassing charges, have been in prison for 7 months now. The theory was that a lot of those people were, a lot of the worst actors that were never charged, that they were probably FBI informants, and the FBI would be unable to charge them because they were informants. There was
your own agents can be informants, by the way.
Yes, there was a lot of interesting people clad in black bloc going around smashing the windows first, and Trump supporters with MAGA hats trying to get them to stop smashing the windows. We know for a fact, because we showed you this on the show, the door that was attempting to be breached when Ashley Babbitt was murdered, that the person who led the charge on that door was an Antifa member. We know that there was a lot of other weird incidents with possible FBI agents. So why did the FBI release a report saying that it wasn't centrally planned? Well, because the FBI was the one that centrally planned part of it.
They were the only ones.
And now case closed. We can't have, there's no need to have an investigation into whether or not the FBI false flagged this, because the FBI already released out that it wasn't centrally planned. So case closed, we can move on.
If we investigate further, then we have civil agencies investigating informants who are actually FBI agents, and that might lead to them having their information discovered, that they were actually the only ones who were engineering this quote-unquote insurrection. It's kind of funny, though. We have people who are arrested for simply being in D.C., not even going on to the Capitol. We have people who are arrested for that, but they didn't arrest people who were smashing windows and doors.
Dyer and I take no pleasure in bringing to you things that sound like conspiracy theories, which is why we are always careful to make sure that we've got our citations in line. And, I think some of this we're drawing some conclusions, but I think that our conclusions are well-founded.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, maybe I could draw another conclusion. I'll say this. I think what we're seeing about this is I don't think there was ever any intent on trying these people. Maybe a couple, maybe putting a few permanently in jail. But the reason why they're holding these people for so long and not trying them with any serious charges is, in my opinion, it looks like they're trying to scare people from ever doing this ever again. Yes. They're trying to say, this is the strong hand of the government. We're going to take out tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in billboard ads to plaster everywhere your face to make you afraid. Because and it worked. The reality is it worked, because immediately afterwards, Proud Boys kind of went away. We don't really see too much about them anymore. I've been to a MAGA rally recently for Pennsylvania governor, and the staff there, they're paranoid. They're afraid. Like, we were accosted just because, and I don't blame them, just because my husband and I went as two gay people. They thought we were spies, either from the government or from the local university. And the thing is that people are terrified because they don't want to have to be put in, well, solitary confinement is what it really is.
In the gulags, and this is the tactic used by Maoist China, used by the N-word people, and used by all of the dystopic societies of our great science fiction writers that will write dystopian fictions. The way that you control societies best under an authoritarian regime is that you obligate the society to control itself through fear of each other. That is exactly what they're attempting to engineer here. They've already done a wildly successful job of getting the left to hate, like real violent hate of the right.
Without reason.
Without
emotional
reason. So they've already gotten that. They haven't quite figured out, although I think this year is where they got it figured out finally, how to get the right to be more scared. And as you've described, Krieg, we are now paranoid of each other. I mean, there's three people here. I mean, statistically, one of us is a Fed. But someone's sus.
I've been made.
Yeah. Yeah, Dyer and I are each other's FBI handlers. We just don't know it yet. But this is how you keep a society in line under an authoritarian regime, which we are clearly under currently. Probably the best way to maintain an authoritarian regime long term is to call it a republic or a democracy. I think that's one of the best ways to do it. So a lot of people will be like, oh, we still live in a democracy or we still live in a republic. It's like, yeah, I mean, they did a good job lying about that, didn't they? But keeping the population fearful of each other. Like, look at what they're doing with COVID. You're seeing this a lot with other countries, though. Certain blue cities here are trying to do it as well, where they have set up reporting services where you can call in and report your neighbor for doing a wrong thing or not wearing their mask correctly, or spreading spreading wrong think about what the poke does to you. CNN actually, while I was researching our next story with Afghanistan here, I was tempted to put it into the notes, but I saw CNN tracked down, and this was on CNN's website. They were very proud to post it as one of the recommended stories, and it was CNN tracks down spreader of vaccine misinformation. Like, they tracked down some guy again and did a bum rush interview with them. So I mean, this is what it's about. They've already successfully gotten the left to hate. Now they need to get the right to be scared and to be paranoid of each other, and they're doing a very good job of it.
Yeah, we have companies being pressured to fire people who have the wrong opinions. They have social media who's censoring and people who have the wrong opinions. They have their brown shirts in the streets attacking people, and they enjoy the fear that gives conservatives and libertarians, and they know that if you respond in kind, that then the law will come down on you, but not them. So you have a fear. They're trying to instill, and I think they're being very good at it, instilling a fear of doing anything to combat the narrative, even have an opinion, because they know that you could have your entire life ended. You could not only be jailed, but be blacklisted from ever getting a job or going to a certain school or go to a certain college. They could just remove your ability to take part in the market. You can't have a bank account. You can't use PayPal. You can't use social media. They can unperson you if you have the wrong opinions. And that, for most people, that is, that is enough to terrify them out of doing anything.
And it's not just the instilling the fear into the right, but it's what they're doing to their own side, to the left. Gaslighting into complete cognitive dissonance. You can show the video of Ashley Babbitt crossing the threshold and being shot point blank by an officer, completely unarmed. She's a terrorist, she's a terrorist, she's a terrorist. And then you could show the video of Antifa grouping together with a freaking barricade smasher into a federal public building, No, they're heroes, they're patriots. Well, wait a minute, you just said she should be shot point blank, unarmed. But these guys smashing through a window with a barricade smasher. I don't know what it's called. A breaching tool. That's perfectly okay. They're freedom fighters. They're heroes. I mean, the cognitive dissonance that the media has co-opted the left into, they don't live in the same reality we do anymore. They live on some other plane of existence at this point because they're not seeing the same shit that literally everybody else is.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the way it's been described is it's one screen and two movies. So there's one screen playing what should be one movie, but you sit down somebody on the right, you sit down somebody on the left, and they see two different movies. Like you said, especially with the Ashley Babbitt one, you can sit down and we'll watch it, we'll see one thing. Somebody else will watch it, they'll see a completely different thing. And it is. Yeah, it's a break with reality. We've had kind of a society-wide schizophrenic event where we've just on a societal level are unable to perceive reality correctly. All right, well, the most terrifying thing is how long the next story is, so we must move on.
Yes.
Okay.
What story is this?
So we're our second story is story A. A is for Afghanistan. Did something happen in Afghanistan this week?
I don't know. Let's find out.
Okay. Well, it has been one hell of a week. That is for goddamn sure. In our last show, we covered the world's newest country, the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, a nascent dictatorship born of Joe Biden's incompetence and the corruption of American diplomats. At the time, last week, the situation was evolving very, very, very quickly, and in the 6 days since, it has not gotten any better at all.
It started off with Biden and his administration being completely AWOL, in some cases actually on vacation during the crisis, in other cases just not being able to be found, like Biden. The normally very yappy Kamala and Pelosi were strangely quiet this week. Schumer, Schiff, and the squad, silence. And I'm not saying I don't appreciate the silence. However, it is kind of deafening silence when you have the world falling apart in Afghanistan and thousands of Americans' lives at risk. Them not saying something is pretty loud. As for Biden, he was allegedly on vacation at Camp David this weekend.
On Monday, about 48 hours after the collapse of Afghanistan, the commander-in-chief read words that someone else wrote for him off of a teleprompter. Two notable quotes from that included, quote, "Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. It was never supposed to be creating a unified, centralized democracy." His second quote was, "And American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves." Whether Joe Biden believes these words or not, that he said, these are very true. Whether he believes them, whether he wrote them, it doesn't really matter. They are, on the face of it, true words.
Absolutely true that it should not have been our mission. But however, I think if you talk to the military leaders under his command and under Obama and several other presidents' commands, that was their intent, and he did vote to fund those behaviors. So if he's not claiming it now, saying, "Oh, I'm opposed to nation building in Afghanistan," well, then why the fuck did you vote for it?
It's interesting. I didn't even really think about that this week, but it's a good point that Joe Biden's been in government for ever.
The entirety of this
a
war,
lot of
plus.
Trump could have when Trump came in and said, "Oh, I inherited this war. I didn't really have anything to do with starting it." That was true. But Joe Biden, he was there for the start of it. He was there when the original words were written. He was there when he voted to go in.
And he criticized Trump for saying we should end it.
Yeah. So it's not, it doesn't ring as true when Joe says that he inherited this, because he was certainly there every step along the way. Maybe not fully in control of it, but he was at least there and agreed with most of what happened along the way for the last 20 years. Whereas,
he literally voted for it.
Yes, whereas Trump was not, and even Obama wasn't. But Joe has actually been there the whole time with a lot of these decisions. So, especially being vice president for 8 years out of the 20 years is quite a long time to have been in such close contact with the people making the decisions for it. So I guess I kind of missed that when I was thinking about this week.
Yeah. I also want to point out that when he said that American troops should not have been fighting in a war for a country that is not willing to fight for it themselves, if that's what he believed, then why did he extend the pullout, right? If 1 minute longer wasn't worth it because they weren't willing to fight for themselves, why was several months longer okay?
Yeah, Krieg, what do you think about those two statements? I mean, both like on a surface level, and then just kind of like on an irony level that like Joe Biden's the one actually saying it.
Well, I totally agree with what you guys say, and I'll just especially about if he really did agree with this, well, why didn't he do something sooner? Well, the thing is that Joe Biden has had political decision-making abilities on the war in Afghanistan longer than any president has ever sat in office. He had full control over it and decision-making processes as a senator who he voted for the war. He had an immense amount of control and decision-making processes as vice president and now as president. Longer than Bush, longer than Obama, longer than Trump. And now all of a sudden he's changing his tune and he wanted to pull us out of the war. I just don't buy it. And like you said as well, I completely agree. If he wanted to sincerely, if he really felt so passionately about this, oh my God, his poor dead son. If, we just pull out, we just need it just now, it has to happen. Then why didn't he stick with the deal that the Trump administration made with the Taliban to pull out prior to May 1st and follow through on the original deal? Why did he wait longer? I mean, his plan was to pull out on September 11th. The answer is it's pretty clear. It's a political gambit. He just wants to, claim credit for ending the longest war. And again, he wants to pull everything that he can away from Trump, which is also the plan of the DNC, to completely destroy anything that Trump ever did.
And the thing was, he moved the pullout date to September 11th, hoping that he would get a good optics victory, right? Who's going to do a coming home party?
Who was the constituency for September 11th? Like, who was the constituency that was like, oh, that's a good time to like commemorate the end of whatever we were doing over there? Like, other than just like having the Wikipedia page be a clean 20 years, like who's the constituency for
it's a sign of the inability to lead and the complete disconnect from reality that the Biden administration had. They didn't make it for any tactical reason. They didn't make it for any good reason. They just thought, hey, you know what would be a good headline? And they made foreign policy off of it.
Yep, exactly.
That's insane.
Yeah,
it is insane, and it's like, are these people even for real anymore? Are these really just freaking lizard people? I mean, come on at this point.
They're so used to doing everything being a political show. It's all political theater. They even tried to turn their foreign policy into political theater, and ended disastrously, as you can all see.
If it was lizard people, I think it would have been a lot more successful. Just look at Facebook. But what you're saying about Krieg, about the decision making power for so long, I mean, you're absolutely correct, and I'm re-realizing that now here in real time. But you think back on Joe Biden voting for this and supporting it and having decision making power with it for the full 20 years. Well, for the first 16 years, we'll say, up until he didn't have any decision making power the last 4 years. Thank God. But I mean, it wasn't like there wasn't other people who were anti-war. I mean, he could have, as a senator, he could have easily stood up next to Ron Paul and for the last, Ron Paul's been beating on the anti-war drum for a real long time now. And then, Rand's been picking up that torch too. There were certainly people who were speaking out against this the whole time, and Joe never indicated any kind of support for them. And then now all of a sudden he has these words to say, which again is why I asked you kind of both ways. Obviously on the surface of it, these words, they ring true to me that this is a truth that American troops can't be dying in a war that the Afghans aren't willing to die for themselves. And the American military is not designed to be creating nations around the world. You're designed to be toppling the ones that do us harm. And so those are both true statements, but does Joe Biden believe them? I think just absolutely not. And it's I think that's why there was a lot of confusion among conservatives and the right in viewing that speech on Monday, because a lot of the words were very well written by somebody, and they were true words. It's just the man delivering them. It is so obvious that it is just an empty vessel delivering them. You might as well have just had the teleprompter showing on the camera.
Yeah, he only speaks the truth when he's told to and when it fits their narrative. So yeah, he doesn't believe that one bit, and I tend to believe people's actions speak far more than their words, and his actions have been showing that he is pro-war because he is pro-making money.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, you said that Rand Paul, Ron Paul have been like consistently beating the war drum against this war, and there's one other person too, Donald Trump. Donald Trump went on Howard Stern's show way before he even considered running for president and talked about how we need to get out of Iraq, how we need to get out of Afghanistan, and that these were bad decisions. He was against going in. I mean, I'm by no means like a diehard Trump fan, but he's been consistently against this from the beginning. And in Biden's first address about the Afghan withdrawal disaster, he falsely said that he was against the surge when Obama wanted to do a surge way back when. It was total bullshit. He was completely for it, on camera, on video, saying he was, and he just does this gaslighting, fake bullshit. I mean, it's so ironic that the left always says, "Oh, there goes the Republicans gaslighting us again." It's a complete projection, as is almost everything they do.
Yeah. Now, the legacy media, for its part, continued to be its normal self. Why would they ever change? They're shit now, and they were always shit. Watch here how they describe the situation on the ground.
Yep.
They're just chanting death to America, but they seem friendly at the same time. It's utterly bizarre.
You know what's bizarre is they're still doing the fiery but peaceful, but now they're describing a literal terror group that's hanging people in the streets, going in and pulling out people who supported the American administration and Americans into the streets and raping and killing them. I mean, yeah, it's super peaceful. God damn. Do they even think they have credibility anymore?
I don't know. Now, I know that there's been a lot of, since this statement from, what's her name? Clarissa Ward. There's been a lot of back and forth as to like whether or not that was stupid. What did she really mean? I maintain that it was very stupid of her to phrase it like that. Now I will caveat that she is extremely brave in staying there as a woman. She's been there all week. We'll have some more tweets from her later in the show about her experience at the airport. She's been doing relatively great coverage, but this was very early on, and you see that kind of NPC programming showing up in all of these reporters, where even the ones CNN, remember, for like the last 4 years, CNN has not sent reporters out onto international excursions at all, essentially. Most of the mainstream media just hasn't. They've almost entirely 100% of the time been focused on internal, like, White House palace intrigue Trump stories for the last 4 years. She's probably one of the first people from CNN to go out onto a hot situation like this in a really long time. And you can see that she still had kind of that conditioning of like, well, you know, they're brown, so I got to be nice to them and, you know, kind of play at both sides. And that comes out the exact same way that CNN covered the mostly peaceful riot, or the mostly peaceful protests, when you had people being burned alive inside their shops and beaten and killed in the streets by Black Lives Matter and Antifa. It was described as mostly peaceful because, well, they were brown or they supported brown people. And so she's there, and her bravery aside, she still has that conditioning where she looks at it and says, well, you know, I can't say that they're, death to America is bad because they're brown, and I'll get harassed by the Twitter mob later this week. And so she had to put a little lantern on it and say, well, it's death to America, but
sometimes bravery is
they're
foolish.
friendly.
Sometimes bravery is foolish. I'm sure the people that climbed on that plane when they was taking off sure were acting bravely because they're ignorant. There's people who will go and do very dangerous things that seem brave, but based off of their bad assessment of the risk.
Yep. So we had Death to America, but friendly. That was from CNN. Then we have this one from MSNBC.
The country is essentially now in the hands of the Taliban for all intents and purposes. They've taken over Kabul. The president, or should I now say the former president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, has fled the country. The Taliban have taken over the presidential palace. They've renamed the country the Islamic Emirate, taken down the Afghan flag and hoisted up their own colors. And it's been a relatively peaceful, if you like, a process. They haven't had to fire a lot of shots. There hasn't been a lot of bloodshed in Kabul. It was a pretty straightforward takeover for them. They've also taken over the airport. There have been reports of shots fired at the airport, and Taliban fighters are all over the place. But they're not in any sort of clashes with U.S. personnel. Although
we need to break the spell over the left.
Well, thank you, Darth Uncle. We need to break
Thank
the
you.
spell over the left. He just gave us $50. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, well,
That's
thank you.
that's my uncle.
Oh, well, thank you, Krieg's uncle. So interesting that you would describe it as, a mostly peaceful. Well, there wasn't a lot of bloodshed. There wasn't a lot of shots fired, which actually very well describes the riots from Antifa. There was, not every they didn't kill every single person that they ran across.
Not every building was burned down.
Yeah,
just some of them.
Yeah, they didn't curb stomp every mother that happened to walk by. They didn't reach into the car and shoot the driver of every car that drove by. Just, some of them. Mostly
Just
it was
enough
peaceful.
of
It was
them.
mostly peaceful. 97% of the Taliban just they didn't hurt anybody. They were just there. Or was it yeah, it's 93%, right? Yeah, it's 93% is the threshold for mostly peaceful. So
Yeah. So meanwhile, for Afghans, the relatively peacefulness of their friendly neighborhood Taliban militia has them so terrified that they're clinging to the sides of C-17s as they take off. See, if you're so willing to throw away your life for the fraction of a minute amount of chance that you might survive this, taking off on a plane, which is basically zero, then why wouldn't you fight? Jumping on the plane and having to take off is far more of a sure thing that you die. At least there's a chance you might survive, and you might actually preserve your way of life if you were to fight.
Yeah. Yeah, so we got playing on the screen here. We've got the images from the first few days of, I guess, the fall of Kabul. On the right side there, or the left side, you've got kind of the precursor to it, where there is I believe a C-17 trying to take off, and you have thousands of Afghans on the runway clinging to the sides of it. Some of them cling to the sides of it all the way through takeoff. And you can see on the right, the consequences of that is that some of them fall off of it after takeoff. And as Dyer said, I'm just the way that this was portrayed in the media on both sides, both the left and the right media, was like, oh my God, isn't this a horrific loss of life? They're so scared. We have to save them. And I look at this, and I'm similar to what Dyer just said. I'm very confused at what do you have to do to think that grabbing onto the side of a plane is a better idea than staying and defending your country? I don't like. I guess it's one of those issues too, Dyer, where it's not necessarily bravery, it's possibly stupidity. But why? It fell so fast. It all fell so fast, and it was an unwillingness to fight by the people at large. And we're going to keep going through that for the rest of the night. Just the Afghans' unwillingness to take any kind of responsibility for their safety. But I just can't. I really can't comprehend where I'm going to grab on the side of this airplane that I'm obviously going to fall off and die horrifically, why wouldn't I just stay and fight? I don't understand. And it's not one or two people. I mean, this is a cultural problem that they have apparently, where they have just this kind of just misunderstanding about what it takes to survive, and are willing to do stupid things instead of doing something smart and intelligent to actually provide for their own safety.
And the irony is that the kind of thing they're going through, where their government is their country is in, which is not really a country, by the way, it's a bunch of tribes. We keep calling it Afghanistan, but Afghanistan doesn't have a central controlling government that actually is like we would associate to like big America. They have different groups, small territories, are all under control of different tribes, and they're loosely connected and have loose loyalties. But anyways. It is
okay. Yeah, so this is my part, right? What's that?
Did I cut out?
No.
Okay.
All right, so some important context for this is that one of the people that fell from the plane has actually been identified. And as Krieg alluded to earlier, it was a 17-year-old who played for the Afghan National Soccer League. The story is that he actually abandoned his family in the middle of the night, and his plan was to get his way onto an airplane and to escape the country and leave them behind.
Did not work out well.
It was a very, very honorable thing for him to do as the man of his family.
So if they were to stay here and fight, what they're going through right now is what normally would be hard times to having the ability to make strong men, right? But we gave them the last 20 years of a false peace where these people were not being required to evolve as a people. And I think that if anything, all we've done in the last 20 years is make them weaker and less likely to fight.
Well, yes, as we know, we've spent a couple $1 million on gender studies programs for them, which I'm sure helped out in the final days of the regime.
The people in Kabul were basically, we have a woman who was complaining about not being able to be, a photographer, and she was used to a life of going to Starbucks. And what we given her was, and many people like her, was in Kabul, we gave her a false reality of what her country or her area was like. She was being isolated from the reality of what was going to happen when the Taliban came back. And instead of learning to, become stronger people to fight off the Taliban, we gave them a sanctuary where we had an entire generation able to go to adulthood without ever having to struggle.
Yeah, and there's a spot later on in the story. I'm actually going to bring it back up to here, Dara. I'm just going to paste it in the notes, and we'll start reading from there because it kind of fits on with what you were talking about here. But yes, there was a story in Washington Wall Street Journal this week. Dyer, can you read that quote there?
I think I'm in the wrong spot. One second. Okay, I see it. Okay. So from the Wall Street Journal, in Kabul, many young women have never even worn a burqa, and some often appeared in public without headscarves. The wealthiest neighborhoods have come to resemble the West, with young Afghan men and women mixing freely in cafes modeled on Starbucks.
I just have to ask, who the fuck told them to set up that kind of society? I love the West. I love Starbucks when I've got an extra $30 to spend. But young people mixing together at Starbucks and doing the main part of the story was about a woman who was a photographer. Great if she lives in the West. But honestly, that doesn't really sound like a culture that's taking the threat of existential destruction from the Taliban seriously. It sucks. I'm not saying that they don't deserve to eventually have a Western-style country. I'm just saying that
they need to fight for
right now. That's not a society that's taking the threat of the Taliban or taking the responsibility of developing a brand new nation from nothing. They're not taking that seriously. One of our founding fathers, John Adams, famously said, quote, "I must study politics and war so that our sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophies. Our sons ought to study mathematics and philosophies, geography, natural history, and naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and or agriculture in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain. Basically saying he knew that as one of the founding fathers, somebody who fought in the revolution, who founded the country, that there is certain responsibilities he has as the first generation. And he knew that even the next generation would still have responsibilities, that we would not be able to create some kind of utopia overnight. Now, we are so blessed to live in America right now where we have that history of the generations that did that. And if you're in America and you want to go to Starbucks and be a photographer, great. But you can only do that because our founding fathers did the other stuff. They did the hard stuff. And
the Renaissance only came after they already had gone through a political and war stage where they developed a nation that was prosperous, that allowed people to focus on the arts.
Yes. So why did Afghan fall so fast? Because they spent 20 years focusing on Starbucks and photography when they should have been learning how to fight wars and good political philosophies, not Islam.
Yeah.
They could have
Do
been
you think
learning...
that those...
Go ahead.
Do you think those illiterate soldiers who barely knew how to fire a gun understood political philosophy?
No. That's why they had no idea what they were fighting for.
Right. The big difference between the Taliban and the Afghan army is the Taliban knew what they were fighting for. They're completely loyal to it, and they were willing to die for it, because what they're fighting for was a philosophy of religion that they have dedicated their entire lives to. The Afghan soldiers, which were mercenaries, had no loyalty to the quote unquote government, which is basically one tribe among many, and they had no idea of the philosophy behind a democracy. So they had nothing to fight for, and they definitely weren't willing to die for it.
Yes. And so the story from the Washington Journal or the Wall Street Journal was, it was supposed to kind of elicit emotional response from you, make you feel bad, make you say, oh, we need to import as many Afghan refugees as possible right now because, well, there are a bunch of photographers that go to Starbucks. They don't know how to fight a war and live under the Taliban. And I do feel terrible for them for doing that. But that one, I'm not going to be tricked into making a policy position based off of an attempt to get an emotional response out of me. That's for starters. But second, I look at that and I think, we had 20 years. We had 20 years with them. Who the fuck decided that we were going to build them a society that skips all of the steps required to found a new country? America knows our generation experienced, but as a country, as a culture, we've experienced relatively recently as compared to most of the West, what it takes to successfully bootstrap a brand new fucking country from scratch. We know what it takes. We know the generations of toil and suffering it takes to do that, to get it to be strong. Now, 250 years later, what's the state of America?
Well, you have to maintain it by teaching those stories.
Yes, But you look at what they did in Afghanistan, and there was a conscious attempt to skip through all of those steps and to get them to the Starbucks phase as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
As quickly as possible.
Afghanistan is at the war and politics stage still, and they haven't progressed to move on to the arts and architecture and the tapestry and statuary phase. We are blessed beyond measure to live in America in this era, but they don't have that luxury. We gave them a gift of 20 years, and they pissed it all away in about 13 hours. There is a lot of blame to go around in the West, but at the end of the day, it is a failure of the Afghans people.
Yes.
We can't fight the war for them. If they want that culture, they want that way of life, they have to fight for it.
Yep, but they were so happy to have Starbucks. And they didn't think about the long-term consequences of that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Nope. I'm moving on to a different subject, so go on.
Yeah, and if I can't say too, like when we just to kind of give you a perspective on the culture of the Afghan people, when we first came to this country, 90% of the people there had no idea what the hell 9/11 was and what had happened. And the people there are so detached from reality, because they don't have the technology. They literally thought the Americans were there to fight dragons in the mountains. They have no idea, no concept. And instead of trying to inspire a unified culture through patriotism, through nationalism, through a unified ideal, which is what the American Revolution was fought on, because like you guys said earlier, we know a thing or two about starting a new country, bootstrapping a country from nothing. Instead of trying to inspire some of that, we figure, oh, well, we'll just throw a whole shit ton of consumerism at them. We'll just pimp them out on Starbucks and McDonald's and Pizza Hut, and maybe that'll inspire something. But all we did was we created good times fictitiously out of nothing, out of freaking cardboard and Play-Doh and spit and chewing gum, and they were like, oh wow, this is great, I can live in this whole society and do all these things. But they had no idea why. Nor did they care, because they had no reason to care. There's no unified culture. There's no unified philosophy. There's nothing worth fighting for. But what did to fight for? The Taliban had, like you guys said, a unified philosophy, a philosophical religion that they were willing to die for. And in many places, the Afghan army would go around. They would horribly, I don't know how much I could say, but horribly abuse young boys, which the United States Army was told
Bachabazi. We already talked about that.
Okay, well, we were told to look the other way, and Green Berets have been arrested and put in Leavenworth for lashing out at Afghan soldiers sexually abusing young boys, and the come along and say, do you want this to stop? We'll make it stop because we won't tolerate it. So the people said, wow, that sounds something worth fighting for, because that's clearly a moral better than what we're doing now, allowing these despicable acts to go on. Not that I'm defending the Taliban, but the point is that they had a reason to fight, whereas consumerism is not a reason to die for. Your freaking caramel macchiato is not a reason to jump on a live hand grenade to save your buddy over.
Yeah, and as while we're criticizing Afghanistan's culture not being able to create a democracy where it's at, it is worth pointing out that a large portion of the United States has not been taught the lessons of our founding, the principles for which our nation was built upon. They've been taught to hate our country, and they are soft men and women created by soft times and with their minds warped by cultural Marxism. And they also would not have the moral fortitude or bravery to fight for this nation. In fact, they likely would side with those who would want to destroy it.
Yeah, and to respond a bit to chat too, it's I'm not saying America's current state is perfect or the desirable outcome to building a new country. I'm merely referring to that if you want to start a new country, you can't skip to the end. And that is what Afghanistan, that's what we attempted to do in Afghanistan, what our elites tried to do. And yes, I do understand that as of right now, a lot of Americans would be unable to face those hard times. But again, that is because we went through the history of building a country. And yeah, there's a lot of issues with America right now. If obviously we talk about that on the show every other day. Actually one of the biggest issues with America is the new culture that we've been given from our quote unquote elites or the overstate. And it's interesting. The same reason why America is falling apart is the same reason why Afghanistan fell apart. We actually, contrary to popular belief, I believe that we were extremely successful in transferring our culture to the Afghans, at least to the culture of our elites, that is. The Afghan government was extremely corrupt, as is our government. Pedophilia was the name of the game over there. It was very well established, as it seems to be here in America, where the elites participate in pedophilia rings, as some people believe. And it seems that we were able to successfully transfer that over to Afghanistan. And then cowardice, the cowardice of our elites, is also been reflected in Afghanistan as well. So we did do a fantastic job of transferring to them the culture of American elites, unfortunately. And for the same reason Afghanistan was unprepared for a fall, America will also be facing some hard times in the relatively near future for similar reasons. But that doesn't mean that our analysis of why Afghanistan didn't successfully bootstrap itself into a new democracy, that doesn't mean that our analysis was wrong just because America's facing some hard times right now.
Yeah, the process is the same. We're not doing the process for them. They're not going through they are still going through the same process where they have to develop through hard times. So in an interview that took place on Tuesday and began airing on Thursday, Biden met with ABC's George Stephanopoulos. I thought I was going to get his name wrong, but I got it right.
I thought you were going to get it wrong too. I'm really proud of you.
Wow. So to discuss the Afghanistan debacle, Stephanopoulos is one of the most corrupt Democrat partisans in the media. It is definitely top tier corrupt partisan. So this should have been an easy layup for Joe. Probably why he picked him, by the way. Joe probably thought he was going to get a layup easy interview. So for example, here he is responding to the situation of people holding onto planes that we just watched.
But we've all seen the pictures. We've seen those hundreds of people packed into a C-17. We've seen Afghans falling.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
What did you think when you first saw those pictures? But we've all seen.
That was 4 days ago, Dyer. 5 days ago. The old 4 or 5 days ago trick.
Oh man, it doesn't matter what you failed to do or did do, as long as it was 5 days ago. You're past the statute of limitations.
Exactly. I mean, like, January 6th, man. That was like 4 or 5 days ago, man. Who cares about that?
It ain't worth talking about anymore. It's old news.
It's just a new take on that. At this point, what difference does it make?
Yeah,
Yes.
for real. At least Hillary waited like a couple of years. Jesus Christ. Yes. For the record too, so maybe on Thursday it was 4 days ago when the people were hanging out at the side of planes, but this interview took place on Tuesday, and
Right.
On Tuesday it had really only been 1 or 2 days, not 4 or 5 days since it had happened. This is like really, really next level history of now type stuff. There is no past. There is only the present. The party is right. It is just a continuous moment of now. You're never allowed to look back in history because that was like 4 or 5 days ago, man.
If you look at the past, you might see a mistake I made. Don't listen to me in the past. Listen to me in the now.
Well, we've always been at war at Oceana, and if we look 4 or 5 days ago, maybe we weren't.
That'd be awkward.
Yeah. So, how long ago that happened is not the only thing that Joe Biden couldn't remember during that interview. We also have this, which I can't remember which clip this is, so I'll be surprised to watch alongside you guys.
Whole hell of a lot more troops.
But your top military advisors warned against withdrawing on this timeline. They wanted you to keep about 2,500 troops.
No, they didn't. It was split. That wasn't true. That wasn't true.
They didn't tell you that they wanted troops to stay?
No, not in terms of whether we were going to get out in a time frame, all troops. They didn't argue against that.
So no one told your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No one said that to me that I can recall.
Wow. No one said that to me that I can recall. Wow.
Something to say, Greg?
No, nothing. I was just making fun of the, sad old man. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's far from the only thing that Biden can't recall. Take our troop deployments in other countries, for instance, which he should, as the commander-in-chief, have an intimate awareness with, but he does not. Uh-oh, I missed the tabs here. There we go.
We're going to be protected. And we have maintained the ability to have an over-the-horizon capability to take them out. We don't have a military in Syria to make sure that we're going to be protected.
Oh, fuck.
For the record, we have currently 900 servicemen and women stationed in Syria right now.
Yep.
Worse than that is in what the interview left out. It's what ABC decided to leave out of the tape to air, because it was a presidential interview. They were required to release the full transcript, even if certain parts of it did not air. So we're going to read through a few of those left out segments that never made it to tape. And I have up here on the screen.
When you look at what's happened over
I have up here on the screen, you'll see I'm on abcnews.go.com, and this is their website, so they released this. So Dyer and I are going to read through the left out parts of the transcript because it's so ridiculous. I think you guys won't believe us that we're reading it unless I'm actually showing up on screen that we are at abcnews.go.com, and we are looking at the transcript that they released. So let me jump to the part that we're going to read here. Okay. So in this segment, this was a segment that ABC did not air. That they cut it out. And there's actually been a few other segments too where it's been found that the transcript, when you line it up with the tape, they actually kind of even chopped apart Biden's sentences and stitched them back together to make new sentences, which is really wild. Uh-oh, what happened here? Okay, so in this segment, which ABC decided to cut out, you can see on the screen here, we are going to be reading it directly from abcnews.com. Biden forgets which branch of the military his dead son Beau was in. The segment begins with Stephanopoulos saying, Dyer, it's your part.
Oh, sorry. I think a lot of Americans and AI, even a lot of veterans who served in Afghanistan, agree with you on the big strategic picture. They believe we had to get out, but I wonder how you respond to an Army Special Forces officer, Yaviar McKay. He did 7 tours. He was shot twice. He agrees with you. He says we have to cut our losses in Afghanistan. But he adds, I just wish we could have left with honor.
Biden responds, look, that's like asking my deceased son Beau, who spent 6 months in Kosovo and a year in Iraq as a Navy captain and then as an Army major. And, I'm sure he had regrets coming out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq. He regrets to how it's going, but the idea, what's the alternative? The alternative is why are we staying in Afghanistan? Why are we there? Don't you think that the one who's most disappointed in us getting out, Russia and China, they'd love us to continue to have to.
Fox, 2 things. Did you have a stroke just now?
Yes, I actually had a stroke. So I think that I think I reverse engineered a stroke. My brain was just like, oh, we must be having a stroke, and so I had a stroke.
Because whoever Biden definitely sounded like he's having a stroke in this quote, and you saying it sounds the same. Also, did he just say his son was in the Army?
Well, no. So he, I'll reread that part. So. Look, that's like asking my deceased son Beau, who spent 6 months in Kosovo and a year in Iraq as a Navy captain and then a major, as an Army major. And, I'm sure he had regrets coming out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq. So I don't know what, I'm pretty sure Beau was in the Army because I think Hunter was in the Navy. So I'm pretty sure Beau was Army. But
right,
I don't.
Okay. But he's not sure.
He's clearly not sure. And I don't know, and maybe you guys can speak to it, but I would imagine that and this is kind of serious, but I'd imagine as a parent, you know which branch your kids are in and you know where they're stationed at as long as you're allowed to know, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Especially the dead ones.
Yeah.
Died, and he can't even give his son the dignity and respect of remembering what branch he was in, either because he is completely stupid or he seriously is not fit to be the commander in chief.
Yeah, so
and
the reason why I said it like that is because I think that the only thing that would get you to forget something like that I would imagine that one of your kids being deployed in the military is like very deeply etched in your brain, and the only way to get it out of there is with dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
I think that this is pretty clear. Again, you're looking at something that's like a real like strong, what I would imagine to be a very strong, deep memory, something that's very visceral memory of like what your kid was doing. And again, I don't have kids, so I don't know, but that's why I was asking you guys to kind of elaborate on that. But I would imagine that for that memory to become so unseated that
this
you would
is
have
painful
to have dementia.
watch. So obviously, I've had family who had dementia, and I'm seeing the same things in him, but it's also one of it's pretty obvious. He's forgetting names of countries wrong. He's getting confused and then angry in response to being confused by unexpected questions that he wasn't prepared for. He's having trouble receiving new information. One of the big characteristics of his administration is that most of his administration has been run by his administration, but not him. They even have mentioned that his opinions are separate from the opinions of the White House, because the country is on autopilot, being run by bureaucrats other than the president, and he's being given what to say. He's just being the mouthpiece who's being used as little as possible because he can only say things somewhat intelligible when he's on script. He is not able to process new information. I do want to go back one step, though. You gave me a prompt earlier about him saying that he was never advised by his military advisors or leaders that he should leave troops in Afghanistan. So I had not prepped the paragraph for it, but I just went and grabbed the information because I know that he had. And I'm not sure if it's common knowledge, but the general consensus of our top military brass was they wanted the forever war to keep going on. So he said that he was not advised to leave troops there, but that's absolutely not true. In fact, he was advised by almost all of the top brass, specifically General Frank McKenzie, commander of U.S. forces in the Middle East, General Austin Miller, and commander of NATO forces in Afghanistan, and Mark Milley. All of them, where it was published in April, had advised him to leave troops in and not pull them out at all, to leave 2,500 at least.
Darth Uncle in chat says Biden's strongest memory of Bo is being able to use his death as a political tool, and unfortunately, I'm now cynical enough to agree with that.
Yeah. So, given that he doesn't remember what branch his son was in, it really doesn't come to any surprise he doesn't remember our military deployments or capabilities. I doubt that he even remembers the briefings he receives on the topic.
Well, that's clear from his previous script that we watched, right? Where he said, I don't recall anybody telling me that. Maybe they did, but I don't recall it. So yeah, he very obviously does not remember the briefings that he's being given.
Right. That is becoming even more clear in the next part of the story, in which there is allegedly 15,000 Americans stranded in Afghanistan today.
The number that was originally reported on Wednesday as the number of Americans stranded was 10,000. In a press conference on Thursday, General Hank Taylor reported that we had a capacity to exfiltrate 9,000 people per day, and that the capacity was currently increasing. So on Wednesday, we had 10,000 people. On Thursday morning, Hank Green says that we had capacity for 9,000 people removed per day. By the end of the day on Thursday, the original 10,000 stranded Americans minus the 9,000 evacuation capacity left us a remaining 15,000 Americans stranded in Kabul.
On Friday afternoon, we after another full day of 9,000 exfiltration capacity, the Associated Press reported that the number of stranded Americans fell to only 15,000. That math doesn't seem to make any sense. As of this afternoon, Saturday, after another full day of 9,000 exfil capacity, MSNBC reported the number of Americans stranded to Afghanistan further fell to just 15,000. So it hasn't changed.
So this is just me right now, Fox speaking. Dyer, Krieg, you can agree or disagree if you like, but this is just my statement right now. I don't believe the 15,000 number. I think that there are Americans stuck in Afghanistan. I think that's pretty obvious. But just watch. I think that they're going to keep the number at 15,000 for another day. I think maybe through next week. I was predicting on Thursday that the number 15,000 would stay at 15,000 for several days. And I've been undisappointed by the media. I think that the number will stay at 15,000. I think it might even go up over the course of the next week. And why? Why do you ask? Because I think that they're using that number to launder tens of thousands of Afghan refugees out of the country. If the number of stranded Americans drops to zero, the taste that the Americans have for this debacle right now drops to zero as well. So long as they keep reporting that there's Americans stranded over there, they can keep filling planes with Afghan refugees and pulling them out of the country. But as soon as that number drops to zero, the American people will lose their patience with that. So that number of Americans trapped in Afghanistan, watch, it will stay at 15,000 for at least another 2 days, I think. I think it might stay at 15,000 for into the next week, but I think it'll stay at least 10,000 through Friday. Watch if I'm wrong. It's a prediction, but I think I will be shown correct on that. And again, General Hank Green, General Hank Taylor, who has some responsibility with the exfiltration operations, the evacuation operations there. He stated on Thursday that we had a capacity for 9,000 per day. It's been about 72 hours since he said that. And in that time, the number of stranded Americans has gone up by 5,000, not down by 27,000. So something's happening over there, and we're going to talk about that, but something's happening over there. While the State Department has refused to give out clear demographics of who's being flown out, they refuse to give out clear ratios of how many Americans versus how many Afghanistan refugees are coming through. They've not said, again, they just keep saying, oh, well, there's 15,000 Americans over there, even though supposedly at least some of them are flying back. But currently, with publicly available data without the State Department, estimates are putting the ratio at 8-1. 8 Afghans to 1 American flown out of the country so far. So
and
you
that
watch.
Data was based.
You watch.
That data was based off of the Pentagon saying that they were hoping in the very initial reporting they hoped to get out 10,000 Americans and 84,000 Afghans. But that's still not clear because obviously the number of Americans changed.
Well, I'm basing that off the day one military reported that there was 300 and some Americans flown out and there was like 1,000 and change Afghans flown out.
That also jives with what they were reporting was at that time was there.
So, but you watch, everybody watching, you watch for the next week, and if you keep seeing that number 15,000, you know what's happening. They're using that number to just keep you invested in it, because as soon as that number drops to zero, a lot of Americans are going to say, okay, what are we still doing in that airport? And if they say, oh, we're trying to pull 1 million Afghans out and bring them to America, you're going to get a lot of no thank you please. But so long as there's still Americans trapped over there, they can continue using that to launder Afghan refugees into our country.
Here's also why I think that number is completely fake as well. If the State Department was actually planning a good pullout, they should actually have known specifically the exact number and identities and locations of people who are going to be coming out. If they're actually planning to exfil these people, if they actually had a plan like they claim they do. But they don't even know the exact number. And they started off with 10 and they're like just between 10 and 15. Then they started using the number 15. Like, no, you would actually know who you have and you'd be giving us an update of who is coming out. And if you actually had a plan to take people out, you probably would be doing rescue missions instead of telling people to come meet you at the unsecure airport.
Yep. Thoughts, Krieg?
Yeah, I mean, what better idea do we have to import all these people who we already discussed earlier have no cultural similarities to us in that, they think we're literally there to fight dragons, and they'll cling on the planes despite knowing that they'll probably die. Or maybe they didn't know because they're that culturally inept. But we're going to import all these people into our country who we just abandoned and left them behind. And we pulled out, we left them to their devices, and we're going to bring them here, and they're going to have absolutely no problem just immersing themselves in American culture and hugging and kissing babies, and everything's going to be fantastic because we just pulled out of their country and withdrew their air support, military support, and all those wonderful commodities that we've been shoving up their ass for 20 years. So everything will be just fine. These people will have absolutely no hostilities towards us whatsoever.
If you guys watching would like to know a little bit more about how Afghani refugees interface and assimilate with the West, the Lotus Eaters, Sargon of Akkad's new outfit, they have some fantastic reporting on the UK's experiment with bringing in Afghan refugees over the last several years. I would encourage you to go find them either lotuseaters.com, or they also have a YouTube channel where they post segments, and find their segment on the Afghani refugees in the UK. It is extremely eye-opening and enlightening, and let's just say I don't think America requires more pedophiles.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just because they're imported here, and now they get, access to healthcare and all our social services and all our
kids
benefits. And, that doesn't magically, wave a wand and make their tendencies to rape small boys for their own pleasure go away. So
hey, that's unfair. They also rape small girls.
No, that's just the Taliban. We're not talking about the Taliban. We're talking about the Afghans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just swap genders. They just become less gay when they're the Taliban.
Yes.
Because of religion.
It's a hell of a religion. So one of the other reasons why that number 15,000 and 10,000 seems a little bit sticky, doesn't seem to be moving very much per day. It doesn't seem to be going down by 9,000 per day. That's for damn sure. One of the reasons why is that there's been some reports again from Clarissa Ward, the CNN journalist that we talked about earlier. She tweeted out, somebody else tweeted out on her behalf, quote, "I'm sitting here for 12 hours in the airport, 8 hours on the airfield, and I haven't seen a single U.S. plane take off. How on earth are you going to evacuate 50,000 people in the next 2 weeks? It just can't happen." Now, I'm going to just ignore the part of her statement that assumes that we're going to be pulling in an extra 35,000 Afghans, that's just an assumption. But it is interesting that she's saying that, we have this big emergency. There's all these people at the airport. We have all these planes. We have capacity for 9,000 per day. And to give you guys kind of an idea of what 9,000 per day is, General Hank Taylor said that is approximately 20 C-17s per day, which is a fucking lot of C-17s. Dyer, yes, no?
That's a lot of them, yes.
Okay.
I mean, they could pack them in more, but that's if they're assuming like normal seating.
Yes. So there's been other reports that so we have this report that the planes are not taking off with very much regularity. We've also seen reports that the planes that are taking off are very low capacity. They are less than half full, if that. So we have planes leaving half empty. We have Americans stranded in a terminal for 12 hours with no planes taking off. What's going on here? There seems to be a mismatch. You got a bunch of people who want to leave. We have a bunch of capacity for them to leave, but somehow those people are not getting onto the planes when they leave, and then the planes just aren't leaving in general. So, not to worry.
Yeah, where's the sense of urgency, right?
Yeah. So to start off here, just doing what the White House does, just straight up denying. We have a retweet from Ronald Klein, and if you don't know who Ronald Klein is, that's fine. Nobody does. He is the White House spokesperson, which I think is just like Jen Psaki on the opposite of steroids. He retweeted this again. Clarissa Ward is actually in Afghanistan. Well, she might be out by now, but she was actually in Afghanistan when she said this, and that's pretty pretty hot territory there. And you've got Ronald Klein from the White House, just cushy DC living. He's probably at a Starbucks when he retweeted this back out. Well, we evacuated 5,700 people in the past 24 hours. The best military operation in the world is in charge. So in response to her saying, well, no planes have taken off in 8 hours, he says, yeah, but they did. But she's on the ground. She's the on-the-ground reporter for it. The White House guy, the White House spokesperson, that's just a glorified propaganda minister. So him just retweeting this and just straight up denial, yep, nope, not happening. We evacuated 5,700 people, even though let's see here, he did this on August 20th, which was yesterday. Oh, that's weird because the 15,000 Americans stranded in Kabul didn't go down by 5,700. So. Something.
It's also funny. What else happened on the 20th?
Yeah, there's a lot of weird math going on here. It's almost like the people who said 2 + 2 = 5 are running the world now.
Where's that other story about the 20th and flights not happening? Is that later on in this section?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
So they told Americans to stop coming to the airport on the 20th.
It's in here somewhere, but I don't know where.
Okay, we'll get to it. But really, what is going on here? Why are there Americans in the airport, but the planes are either not taking off or taking off without them? Because apparently a plane took off, but didn't have any of those 15,000 Americans in it.
Several planes have taken off.
Several. So according to General Milley, they are waiting on the State Department to process evacuees, which they are able to do at a rate of about 150 an hour. But still did zero, apparently. I guess there's 0 hours in 24 hours. So what kind of processing are they doing? What's taking so long? Well, it's signing a bunch of paperwork. Oh, that's what the State Department loves. They love their paperwork. Oh, and also agreeing to a blood tax.
So we have a security alert. Afghanistan reparation assistance for U.S. citizens. This was put out by the State Department. It is a non-standard document, so somebody spent time typing this up, custom for the event this week. And I know it's a little small on the screen here. Let me see if I can open this up as a bigger image. There we go. You'll see here, this section 2 down here. Flight costs. Reparation flights are not free, and passengers will be required to sign a promissory loan agreement and may not be eligible to renew their U.S. passport until the loan is repaid. The cost may be $20,000 USD or more per person. So what is the State Department doing on the ground in Kabul right now? They are getting Americans to sign a blood tax. You can either sign over $2,000 or more blank check, or you can stay here and die. That is what the State Department is busy doing right now in Kabul. Because
during the fall of Saigon, did we require people to pay to not die?
I don't know. That's a great question. I'm guessing no, but I don't know.
The answer is no. That was a rhetorical question.
Oh.
No. Any time in the past, like the evacuation from Cuba, or any other time we had American citizens being evacuated from a unstable country, have we ever charged them $2,000 or any amount of money for the right to continue living? I thought that was our government's job to protect our citizens.
It is, in fact, not just the government's job. It is the government's one and only purpose. It is their telos, you might say. The government exists for only one purpose. That is to provide for the common defense of U.S. citizens. Everything else it does is a function of that. The idea that after paying taxes and even working for the government, that you now are going to have to pay when they say $2,000 or more per person, they might as well just say you're going to have to pay an exorbitant amount that's going to be more than $2,000, obviously. That is really, it's the result of the federal Leviathan, of just this bureaucracy, that of course we would bureaucrat ourselves to death. Because
what kind of loan agreement is that? Most loan agreements say this is the maximum you might pay, and then you might be less than that. They're saying here's the minimum of $2,000. It could be anything else.
Well, and you're going to sign a promissory loan agreement. I can't imagine that the signature on that in this situation would be valid due to being under duress.
Also, there's no way you can consent to an amount that's unknowable.
That is true.
That's insane.
So why are planes taking off half full? Why is it taking 8 hours on the tarmac and 12 hours in the terminal to get Americans processed through? Why has the number gone from 15,000 and dropped down to 15,000 Americans stranded? Well, it's because the State Department is sitting there doing a bunch of paperwork with them. That's why. But not to worry. If you're an Afghan, you can ride for free. And also, you get a complimentary meal for your troubles. Here you have the DoD proudly proclaiming that they have tasked American soldiers with doing anything but helping out Americans. And I have a picture here to go along with that bold statement I just said. So we have the from at Department of Defense, at Depth of Defense. U.S. Army soldiers serve lunch to Afghan civilians while they complete special immigrant applications. There is not all those 15,000 stranded Americans are in the airport right now. In fact, that's a story we're about to get into. A lot of them are not in the airport, and a lot of them can't get to the airport. And what do we have going on here? We have, unfortunately, our servicemen and women in uniform are taking care of somebody else.
If I was in command, or even not in command, just somewhere where I could act on this at this base, I would throw out those State Department guys, have the troops be able to be shown what document they're looking for, what passport, right? Oh, this is what an American passport looks like. Look for this. And then the American soldiers would take over this task because the State Department guys are just making the process take longer and be less sensible. We would not have them sign any fucking documents. This is an evacuation of people whose lives are in danger. Make sure they're an American citizen, get them on the plane, fill the plane up, get them out. Afghans, sorry, Americans first.
The unfortunate thing is that these soldiers just kind of like went right along with it. I don't know what's worse is the soldiers just going along with it. Like, oh yeah, like, you know, there's Americans that, you know, I assume you guys enlisted because you had some, you know, patriotism and wanted to protect and defend the American people. But these guys apparently, you know, they've got Americans being beaten. Well, not mostly unbeaten, as we'll see here in a bit. Americans being mostly unbeaten outside the airport, and here they are serving lunch to the Afghan refugees when there's Americans right outside their walls in trouble, and these soldiers just went along with it. And I don't know what's worse is that they just went along with it and haven't given any pushback to it, or that the Department of Defense is so proud that they are not helping out American citizens right now.
It's very possible the guys on the lowest end of the ranks, if they said this doesn't make sense, and the boss says, "Well, do it," or you're getting, you're getting kicked out, or you're getting administrative punishment, or whatever the long lines are, and they're like, "Well, either I do this unsensible, crazy, batshit crazy thing, or I get kicked out," and they're being, you know, terrified in doing with this senseless stuff.
Yeah. Do you want to, let's see. Okay. So we also have, additionally, I'm sure you guys have probably seen this picture. You have the C-17 that was, in my opinion, commandeered by 800 Afghans earlier in the week. The C-17 was planning on taking off. Afghan civilians swarmed the tarmac. This was just after the hanging off the plane incident. Afghans were able to get themselves on board, and the pilots didn't do anything about it. Now, what were they supposed to do about it? I don't know, but here we can listen to the audio from the flight tower of this plane that you're looking at right now at takeoff. Let's listen.
Okay, how many people do you think are on your jet? 800 people on your jet? Holy cow. Okay. Hey, well, I mean, good job getting off the ground. What type, I mean, are these Afghan nationals? Are they Americans? What are they? What type of people? Okay. Okay.
So you can only hear the flight tower side of the conversation, but essentially, for the documents that came along with this leaked audio is that the pilots really didn't know who was on their plane. They just knew that they had about 800 of them, completely unvetted. Nobody was checking passports or to see if they were Taliban, or maybe they had a rusty tin can with some silly putty on top of it when they brought it onto the plane. It was just okay. Your plane's been commandeered and you're cleared for takeoff. Which I've got some opinions about what should have happened. Dyer might have some opinions that he can't really talk about. But Krieg, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, sorry. I was too busy sitting here pricing out my Komatsu D355A bulldozer because I'm in severe need of reorganizing and rebuilding the State Department. I just can't fucking imagine that we would seriously consider charging American citizens trapped by the freaking Taliban of all things. And if you listen to recent reports, ISIS as well, and we're going to seriously sit there and charge these people what amounts to be what you guys said, a blood tax. I mean, I don't know. I know maybe you guys don't agree, but these people have got to be some heartless fucking lizard creatures at this point, because that's the most painful, disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. So every last one of those people that were unvetted people who jumped on that plane, first off, they are anyone who could have a weapon. Anyone could have had a bomb. Anyone could have been an enemy combatant pretending to be a civilian, because they are indistinguishable. All of them should be assumed to likely be enemy combatants trying to take advantage of the situation, because you can't tell the difference between them. Only Americans should be getting on the planes. You cannot take that off that plane, risking the crew, the military assets, and the country you're going back to by bringing these people. They should have used all available escalating properly force to remove everyone off that plane and only take off with the people who are authorized to be on it.
Well, I mean, these are the same people who, decided to throw open our southern borders. So are we really all that surprised?
Not surprised. It's still, angry, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely insane. I mean, to think that, I mean, they could be
You know what? The 15,000 Americans, if they want to come over here, the 15,000 Americans need to stop speaking English, throw on some Afghani garb, and just rush onto a plane, because they're more likely to get to America doing that than going through showing their passport.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they wouldn't have the balls to question, profiling on who they are, because they'd be worried of not being PC enough. So, I mean, you could easily just throw on, whatever cultural heritage clothing is necessary and just ship yourself over, and they'll gladly welcome you with open arms. And I'm sure that most of these Afghan people don't have paperwork. We have no way to vet them. We have no way to make sure that they're not linked with any of our many enemies that we've created over the years through these endless wars. And they're going to come here and do whatever unspeakable things to us. And the worst is yet to come. And I think that's the hard part that we're going to have to realize here.
Yeah, and you look through this photo, too, and it's, probably about 95% males, military-age males. Again, it's this idea of women and children to the back, Americans behind them, and then your military-age Afghans, as many of you guys as we can get on those planes as possible, unvetted, no payment. We'll get you a free lunch even. Get on here so we can import you as fast as possible. Afghan women and children, fuck you guys. Americans, not necessarily fuck you guys, but give us at least $2,000 plus, and maybe a little bit, sign it with blood.
I don't know. As demanding $2,000 plus is kind of a fuck you, isn't it? Like, if they refuse to pay, are you just gonna let them die?
That seems to be what's going on here.
Yeah.
So this whole situation has really, really, really pissed me off. We have a situation here where this plane that took off. So in my opinion, what should have happened is that when the flight tower realized, oh, this plane has been commandeered by hundreds of people that should not be on it, it's a military aircraft, I would have said, you are not cleared for takeoff. Here is where you need to taxi to. Get the fuck off the runway right now. We are sending in a squad to help you secure your bird. You are not cleared for takeoff. But instead, what you had is a situation where the military was willing to break every regulation in the book. I mean, there is estimates that there was hundreds of regulations broken for this takeoff to take place. And they broke it to evac women, children, cowards, possible terrorists, but they will just stand by. The military will just stand by while the State Department makes Americans sign a blood bond for their life. For their life. The military will break every regulation in the book to get thousands of possible terrorists out of the country. And they will just stand by and let the State Department run this kangaroo court where they are forcing American citizens to sign a blood tax to get onto a plane and taking hours and hours to do it.
So a document they made for the situation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. It was a specially made document. Again, that document has been researched and it has not been found to have been a standardized document at all. Somebody spent time to write that. And then you've got a bunch of State Department officials in Kabul right now implementing this bureaucracy. And you got a bunch of military guys sitting there watching it happen, not doing anything about it.
People who are trying to enforce it right now should be left in Kabul.
Yes. I just got to ask, like, what in the fuck is going on here? I'm sorry, but I think the U.S. military, by and large, has totally lost the plot. Definitely the guys on the ground right now, like completely. They've got foreign combatants, like their summer camp buddies, which I'm going to get into that in a second here. Summer camp buddies and foreign combatants first, Afghan women and children second, and maybe Americans last, but only after they've signed, had their papers checked and signed a blank check. What in the fuck? What I would imagine happening if this was a movie is that you'd have some idiot bureaucrat trying to get the Americans to sign a paper and sign a check and all that stuff, and you'd have a good old American corn-fed boy, Marine or Air Force or Army guy say, "What are you doing? We got to get these people out of here." And the bureaucrat says, "Well, we got to get him to sign this paper." And then the Army guy knocks him the fuck out and says, "Everybody, if you got a blue passport with an eagle on it, get on that plane right the fuck now. It's leaving in 10 minutes. What on earth is the idea that we're setting up a mess hall and we're going to have people sign financial documents, and just if enough Afghans happen to commandeer a C-17, then they're just cleared for take? What on fucking earth is going on in Kabul right now? It is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, it's a complete perversion of what the military is for. People who sign up for the military, we generally view ourselves as fighting for our country, and so that other people, the women and children and other men who are not warriors, don't have to fight and don't have to suffer. We are self-sacrificing. We're willing to sacrifice ourselves for that purpose. It's such a perversion to put the military-age males of another country that is not ours ahead of our own citizens. And among them, we're sending we're not sending the women and children who are the most likely to be, to suffer. We're sending their fighters. Many of them probably are combatants. Not that we should be it's not that they should take precedent over Americans. In fact, I think none of them should be coming. They should all stay and fight for their country. But it is still a crazy perversion that even if you take for granted that they're not going to take only Americans, the fact that we're sending the only people that are likely to be the capable fighters in their country, we're letting those cowards run away to America. And doing that, have them do that before the women, before the children, and before our own citizens. That is a complete perversion. And it's being allowed, facilitated, and enforced by the military, whose purpose is to be self-sacrificing to protect our people. So it is so backwards and perverse.
So the pilots and the air crew for the C-17 that took off in the state, they are It was already announced that they are not going to be charged or investigated or have any marks for any of the regulations that they broke. They are actually possibly being considered for medals for this. Meanwhile, the C-17 that did not allow itself to be commandeered and took off, even though there was people clinging to the side of it, they are currently under investigation, though it is unclear what investigation means in this context. But
imagine they landed in China, and then a bunch of Chinese civilians boarded our plane, and they took off with all these unvetted, unknown civilians from an adversary country. Would you think they get a medal for that?
Well, yeah. So are we supposed to suspect that any Air Force, any American military plane returning from a war zone, that it might possibly be full of locals? Like, is that an expectation now? Is that an expectation?
We should just send our cargo planes around other countries, pick up civilians and bring them back so we can collect more medals.
The idea that American military plane exits a war zone with people on it that were not supposed to be on it is just, I don't know, maybe I'm just like overly fundamental about like basic principles and standards, but like Jesus fucking Christ. And again, I want to highlight the difference between this situation and the American citizens. Hundreds of regulations, not a problem, no repercussions, no disciplinary action at all. Break all the regulations you want to get as many Afghans out of there as you possibly can. And the reason why they are not going to be receiving any disciplinary action is because it was stated that their actions followed the intent of the commander's orders to rescue Afghan civilians. Where's the fucking order for rescuing American citizens? Where is the following the intent to rescue American citizens and allowing the State Department to run a kangaroo financial court? What in the fucking, it is in even the mid-level commanders now. And I'm real sorry for you guys, but I'm sure you guys can see it. The military degradation has gone so deep now. One of the reasons why this pisses me off so much is because I didn't realize it was this bad. That you have, just as Dyer said, a complete perversion of the purpose to defend the American citizen. The American citizen's hardly even being mentioned in any of this. And I'm going to get more into that in a second here. But you can kind of more easily see what's going on here if you compare it to some of our allies, some of our Western allies, that is. The UK military, they're not charging their citizens blood taxes right now. The UK sent in their own special forces to go into Kabul, into enemy territory.
Sorry, I need to correct you, Fox. It's not just the Brits. It's also the Germans and the French sending in special forces to extract individual citizens of theirs.
Exactly.
And they're not making them come to the airport. They're going to their citizens and saving them.
Yes. And those other countries are not spending all of their resources rescuing Afghans at the expense of rescuing their own people. We have Go ahead.
British Parliament said we should not be bringing Afghan citizens to our country that we're not willing to fight for their country.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that is that is one of those simple as statements, that this idea that, oh, well, people who were unwilling to fight, Afghan military people that were unwilling to fight for their country, that like, well, you know, they gave it the old college try, so we'll just take them back to America and give them a reset button. That's ridiculous. America, on the other hand, to the best of publicly available knowledge, has not deployed any special forces units. The paratroopers,
as it reported today.
What's that?
It was reported today. They still haven't. And they're hiding behind the barbed wire of the airfield. They have not left.
We have the Air Force paratrooper rescues, who are like the baddest ass ones that we've got. They're not out there. The SEALs aren't out there. The Rangers aren't out there. The Coast Guard's not even fucking out there. I'm sure if Space Force had the capacity, they would probably also not be there either. But we don't have any special troops on the ground right now. Jesus Christ, if there was ever ever a situation in which special forces would be the correct tool for the job, Jesus fucking Christ, Far Cry 7 is certainly the place to put them, which is what Kabul is right now. If there was ever a time to, like, what is the purpose of special forces but for a situation exactly like this?
I'm not sure special forces would have the patience to follow the orders that those other people are following right now.
Yeah, I'm sure special forces their first mission on the ground would be to go knock out the State Department and put their unconscious bodies onto a plane and get them the fuck out of country.
Yeah, and if I can add to, I definitely agree with everything that you guys are saying 100%. And it's my blood is boiling. I don't think I've ever witnessed anything that so clearly that our government is doing, that our State Department is doing, that our military is doing. I mean, I know that probably just, hurts you to the core, Dyer, like, because you served as well. And
still serving.
Right. Sorry, I forget that I served. Anyway, but what pisses me off about this as well, and I was thinking about this the other day, there has not been a single caning on the floor of the House of Representatives as a result of all of this. Where the fuck are our duly elected representatives? And I'm serious. I mean, you guys do this part-time? You bring forth the news, you share it with people. There are people on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, on all the various different military committees that know that this shit is happening. Republicans, people that we elected that we thought are at least decent human beings who aren't talking about this really. I mean, Ted Cruz will retweet a little bit here and there. They should be out there demanding something happen. I mean, at the very least, demanding the resignation of the entire sections of the branch of government that allowed this atrocity, this genocide of our people to take place, and that their lives are dependent upon two things: whether or not they can pay their $2,000 plus blood tax, or whether or not their skin is dark enough to fucking get on the plane. And that shit alone, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I live in the frickin' Twilight Zone anymore, because I don't know. This shit is so horrible and so disgusting and so evil, purely evil. And nobody is doing anything about it. Nobody is talking. Nobody is standing outside the White House and demanding action.
A few of our elected representatives have tweeted out that their office is, ready to receive phone calls. They've tweeted out their phone number, that if you're in Kabul and you're having trouble getting out, give that senator or congressman a call. But as you pointed out, giving a tweet with your office phone number on it is, not quite any of the other things that you listed out. It seems to be the bare minimum. And I agree that most of our elected representatives are just completely AWOL, nowhere to be seen this week. And the ones that are doing something, well, they're sending out a tweet. Thanks, guys. You're doing a fucking fantastic job. Just absolutely the best.
Yeah. What's going on at the GOP, at least? They've been told to shut up and keep quiet about this. Like, I can't believe that someone like Rand Paul, whose father is Ron Paul, is not out there screaming, bring our people home. Something must be done. You can't charge people, between $2,000 and your life. It's insane.
If there was ever any evidence, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
If there was ever evidence that taxation is theft, I think that this is the case. I mean, your taxation is I mean,
it's blackmail.
Right? I mean, it's the supposed justification for taxes that it ensures your safety and public services, and I would say that needing to be rescued out of a war zone is I would consider that to be a public service that your government should provide for you. I
was always told when I was briefed when I was going overseas for vacation or something like that if I were to get it, new word out to the State Department, that they would move heaven and earth to save me if something bad was happening, right? I don't believe that one bit anymore.
Yeah,
I did when I 10 years ago. But.
Yeah, when I was in when I was in Cuba, that's what we were told was, there was there was people that would come get us if we needed to. And
apparently, no, only if you pay $2,000 plus whatever infinity, I guess.
Yeah, they should they should pay that $2,000 in whatever the failed Afghan currency is, and really stick it to the State Department. It pains me to say it again. Like, this has been a really painful revelation that the military has been this degraded, and the mentality at the commander level is, it's hard to say, okay, you private, whatever your lowest rank is, you've got to go, disobey your orders and, relieve your commander of duty and all that stuff, and just relieve the chain of command all the way up through whoever's down there on the ground right now. But obviously the commanders, who we thought was kind of a, that's where the serious people are, is at the commander level. Yeah, all the officers, they're all, woke college goofy students now, or they're trying to rise their ranks through the politics the way Milley did by talking about their white rage and all that stuff. But the enlisted commanders, that's where the serious guys are supposed to be at. But Apparently not. And unfortunately, it appears that the military command, at least in Kabul right now, the command on the ground is a total fucking joke. But boy, have they done one hell of a number, the left, one hell of a number to the troops on the ground the past 10 years. And you guys can go ahead and make fun of me for, I'm a civilian cuck. I've never served. I was never brave enough to enlist, all that stuff. And yep, sure. But that doesn't change the fact, as I've stated multiple times, as is self-evidently obvious, the military exists for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to provide for the common defense of the American citizen. The U.S. government, the military brass, and a significant amount of the troops on the ground have completely forgotten that. Whoever is in command in Kabul right now needs to relieve, by force, preferably, any State Department officials or military superiors that are forcing or encouraging or allowing elaborate vetting processes for Americans, making them sign over possibly tens of thousands of dollars for their rescue. It's really just simple as, you have a blue passport with an eagle on it, it matches your face with the face on the inside of that document, you get on the fucking plane. If you don't have a blue passport with an eagle on it, we'll get you after all the Americans are out. Get back in fucking line. It's simple as.
Even if you don't have the Blue Eagle passport, what the fuck are we spending all this money on facial recognition bullshit? You mean you seriously tell me that we can't sit there and scan someone's face with a frickin' iPhone and say, oh, yeah, you're part of our frickin' database that we collect on you every goddamn day? Yeah, get on the plane.
Well, they'll use that for if you don't pay your blood tax when you get back.
Yeah,
exactly. You don't pay back that loan. You can be sure that if you walk in front of a camera, it's going to ping you that, oh, hey, we found him. He owes us $40,000.
Fox, about the military losing the plot, and you're right, because the top brass and filtering down have been filtered by the Obama administration, the Biden administration. Wasn't filtered by the Trump administration, to start bringing in people at the top brass who believe in this philosophy that and don't believe in the values of what our military and our country are based on. But there still are people like myself. I'm sorry to make to bring it back to me, but like, I know personally, I have done things to put my career on the line to stand up to these kinds of people. I'm not in the position to stop what's happening here, and I wish I was so fucking much, because it's insane. But there are people like me in the military who are fighting this, and they are increasingly being removed.
Yes, and there's obviously still a lot of people in the military that are great patriots that understand what their purpose is. Unfortunately, there's just so many that aren't, and a lot of the soldiers that were there for the right reasons. We've heard story after story the last last 5 years, we've had just an epidemic of people retiring out, resigning from their post because of all of the things going on in the military, all of the wokeness, all of the sensitivity issues, all of the lowering of standards. There has been, and again, we've heard story after story for the last several years of all of those guys saying, nope, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I thought was going to happen. I can better achieve my purpose elsewhere. And, you know, I think a lot of us, I know me included, kind of hoped that, oh, well, you know, it's still the military. It'll be fine. But we look at a situation like this where it really matters, right? This is a situation where it really matters. What is the actual state of the U.S. military? And unfortunately, it's coming up short. It's really, really, really unfortunate. And this situation is obviously, all of our adversaries are watching the situation right now. All of our allies are watching the situation right now. And I think a lot of American citizens are watching the situation right now. And our adversaries should be excited, our allies should be terrified, and the American people should be even more terrified that if anything ever happens, I don't know that we'd be able to repel it as well as we thought we used to be.
I think it's fairly obvious that we are not prepared to respond to any conflict with Russia or China, and we have lost all credibility that might prevent conflict with those two adversaries. So they're going to be emboldened to take very bold, aggressive steps, knowing that our country and its military has been gutted. Its confidence and its capabilities has been cut. And we are not able to defend our nation. We can't even do what honestly should be a relatively simple operation.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and not to paint the devil on the wall, but I mean, I personally believe that China realizes this, and they also put themselves on the clock. They realize that they have until the next cycle of American politics to take Taiwan. And
that's terrifying. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Before 2023, China will have boots on the ground in Taiwan, and I'm pretty confident in that.
And we will do nothing. Maybe strong words. Probably not.
Please be more inclusive.
Yeah.
Please be more inclusive.
Yeah, we'll just tell the Chinese government, hey, how about you just not violate human rights? Hey, can you stop putting people in concentration? Oh, please stop taking their organs if you don't mind. Please stop.
No, Hans Bricks.
All right, so obviously this all sucks, but Dyer does have one ray of hope. There was a group that was they think that they're people, and they are much better people than any Afghan, any State Department, anybody in the military, and any American citizen. Dyer,
one of the very first groups of good boys to be removed from the country before American citizens. These people were never ever granted American citizenship, even though they've been fighting for our country for many years. They got preference before Afghan citizens, before any of the Afghan fighters, before many of the military were able to go. The military working dogs were evacuated on their own planes and given their own seats on the very first planes leaving Afghanistan. So one tiny silver lining is at least the State Department guys apparently like dogs and didn't require that they pay $2,000 a pop to survive.
That's heartwarming. Got Conan up here on the screen. He was reportedly not in Kabul, though. If he had been, he is reported to that he would have eaten all of the State Department people. So
did he earn a retirement yet? Come on.
I don't know. So rest assured, all the good boys, they're out of the country. So at least a small ray of hope. Okay, so this brings us to the question of, we know that the Afghani people are being prioritized over American citizens to get out of the country and, you know, eventually work their way over here to America, which is what's inevitably going to happen. So that brings up the question, do Afghans of any status deserve to be brought over to America by the thousands? Right now, the estimates of Right now, the estimates of how many Afghan refugees need to be rescued is as low as 80,000 to as high as several million. The idea that they need to be rescued seems also to have generated bipartisan support. That is, both sides of the aisle agree that several tens of thousands of Afghans need to be rescued.
At least they can be wrong together.
Yes. You need to read that part, Dyer.
Mostly what they have been what we've been hearing from the media and the administration and a parade of veterans is that thousands of Afghans fought and died alongside us, and that they were willing to die for their country, and they are good boys and they need to be saved. However, I guess them running shows they weren't willing to fight and die for their country.
Yeah, what's strange here, and especially coming from soldiers, is that they make a point to say that they don't mean every Afghan should come over to America, just the Afghan military that fought alongside us, and the government officials that we installed, and the contractors that were scooping up trillions of your tax dollars, which is really strange. It's a massive perversion of the idea of women and children first, and that's not to mention Americans first, but we will come back to that. Dyer, would you please explain to us why it's so perverse and so strange, this notion of saving the Afghan military and government officials before saving Afghan civilians, much less saving American civilians?
Absolutely. As I said before, it is the purpose of the strong men, the warriors, the military, and their leaders to protect women and children and the weaker in society. And it would be, for a soldier, it would be insane to have them evacuated first. Like, would you leave your wife and kids behind in the house when danger's coming, while it's on fire? Would you have just run for yourself, or would you take care of them first? It is insane. Most soldiers have the mentality of, I will sacrifice, I will suffer to protect my family, to protect the women and children, to protect my community. The fact that they are removing those people shows that they are not, like, the fact that they be willing to go shows that they are not warriors. They do not follow the warrior ethos, and they are cowards.
Right. It's one of those kind of like paradoxes where it's like any soldier willing to die for their country is eligible to be removed from the country. So if you are eligible to be removed from the country, then you're no longer a soldier willing to fight and die for your country. It's one of those logic paradoxes.
Right. So imagine America's under attack. Do you run to Canada or other country and leave your wife and kids?
This isn't running to Canada. This is expecting and demanding that Canada come and save you. And then the Canadian government making a case that the people most deserving of being saved from fallen America are the soldiers. It's absurd.
That is a better analogy. Thank you.
It's absurd.
It is absurd. It's completely counter to the philosophy, the ethos of being a soldier. So these soldiers and veterans have become very confused about what the values of being a warrior is. Not to mention that there are still Americans over there. I think that they should take precedence. One veteran caller into Wilcow majority. The Wilcow majority on Friday said that the Afghan soldiers were so brave and willing to die for their country that they were willing to re-enlist to go back and save them. Okay, so why didn't they stay in the military? There still is a resistance fight going on. That's not very effective. It's not very big, but why don't they join the resistance and fight for their country? So first off, total absurdity that he would claim that the Afghan military are willing to die for their country. They literally were not. Most of them were just there to get as much American dollars as they can, and then as soon as there's actual danger, they left. Second off, the first thing he thinks of is that he would be willing to fight to save the Afghans, not the Americans trapped there. He's saying that soldiers would like to come back to Afghanistan to fight for the Afghans. What about the 15,000 Americans? Why is that not your priority? Is that not what the Americans soldiers signed up for? So it's absurdity that an American soldier, his focus is to go back to Afghanistan to save those Afghans. What about your country? What military did you sign up for? What community were you trying to protect when you signed up for the military? Are you not concerned about the men, women, and children of their American citizens who are trapped in a foreign land around people who want to kill them? Do you not care about saving them at least first? Also, he and a lot of soldiers have become very confused about what is their purpose. The purpose of the military, and the reason I enlisted was to protect American lives, to protect my family, to suffer and sacrifice, possibly to give up everything up to my life so that my family would not have to.
So, I don't care if it's the media or a politician or a U.S. soldier or veteran saying that we, the American people, owe the Afghans something.
Bullshit.
They can all get bent. We don't
give them 20 years.
Yeah, we don't owe the Afghan people a cent more than what we already gave them. They tried all this shit with the Kurds 2 years ago when we pulled out of wherever the hell we were over there. And I wasn't having it then.
Nazi fags.
Oh boy.
How dare you? Juicy nigga.
Why would you do that? I'm a head out. You guys have a good weekend.
Well, thank you very much, Adder Lupus, who gave us $10. I hope you get a chance to watch the conclusion of this when you're back online. But thank you for watching, and thank you for the $10. Much appreciated. But yeah, so they've tried this like kind of head game thing with the Kurds a few years ago when Trump adjusted our troop deployments, and they said, "Oh, you're abandoning the Kurds. They fought alongside of us for so long, and we have to give them everything, and we should take them in as refugees and all this stuff." And nope, I wasn't having it then, and I'm not having it now. This wasn't supposed to be a summer camp where we sent the military over to Afghanistan and they made a bunch of friends that they want to bring back home with them. I'm sorry if that sounds callous, but that is not what the purpose of them being over there. God damn it, Dyer. That is not what the purpose of them being over there was. And I can't imagine what it would be like to fight alongside somebody like that, but that doesn't mean that you get to bring them home with you, and it doesn't mean that you get to use your uniform to try to convince me and other American taxpayers and our government that we need to spend more taxpayer dollars and that we need to spend more blood of the enlisted to go home, to go back to the sandbox and rescue your summer camp friends. We're not doing that.
It's an emotional argument too. Like, can we, as policy, make it so it's policy that Americans will die for every country around the world so that every other country can have freedoms like ours, when we can't even protect those freedoms in our own country? We don't have enough soldiers to do that. It wouldn't work, and it's not something that makes sense as policy.
Yes.
And I think the hard lesson that we're learning too is that you can't give freedom to people. They have to earn it. They have to take it for themselves. Value it. Yeah, exactly. They will see no purpose to it. It'll just be another empty freaking Starbucks macchiato, and less.
Yeah. Exactly. This emotional argument, I don't care who it's coming from, it cannot be transformed into policy. A lot of this is just purely emotional. And it's fine. It's completely compatible. That's what having a value system is, guys. You can have visceral, emotional feelings about something. You can want something to happen really bad. I feel bad about what's going on over there. My heart breaks for a lot of people over there because I know what's about to happen to them, because I'm not an idiot and pretending that Islam is something that it's not. I know what's going to happen over there, and it's going to be awful. There's a lot of people who do the similar things to me that are going to have a really bad day over there, and I don't like that. But we tried, and that emotional argument that I have cannot be transformed into policy. That is what the left does. Policy can only be, let's see here. Oh, does she? Does she now, Dyer? Well, tell her we got about a half hour left. But you cannot be transforming that emotion into policy. So for a veteran with a different take, we have a clip here from Sean Parnell, who recently ran for, I think, governor in Pennsylvania, or was it senator?
He ran for Congress against Connor Lamb, and now he's running for senator to take Toomey's position.
Good. He needs to be in something pretty soon.
He definitely has my fucking vote.
So, and one of the things I'll say here is I think that there's a difference in what Sean Parnell's about to say versus what I've seen a lot of other veterans on TV and on radio saying, and it's their roles. Sean, I believe, had a combat position. Correct me if I'm wrong here, and he had some different ideas about how the Afghans were fighting alongside him versus some of the people who were not in combat positions. Let's watch.
Sean Parnell is running for Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. He was an infantry platoon leader during the war in Afghanistan. He worked with an Afghan interpreter for more than a year before that interpreter helped terrorists plant an IED that killed one of his men. It's a complex subject. He knows it very well, and we're happy to have him on with us tonight. Sean, thanks so much for coming on. Look, this idea that vulnerable populations, whatever the hell that means, should get pride of place are more important than American citizens trapped in Afghanistan. I don't think I've ever seen anything that reveals their priorities more clearly.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Tucker. And if you want to help save this country, go to parnellforsenate.com. So look, we should not have a single conversation about what happens with refugees in Afghanistan until we evacuate American citizens first. That should be our number one priority. The situation is urgent, and we have to get our people out of there before the Taliban takes us hostage. Look, Tucker, I was in Afghanistan for 485 days, 85% casualty rate in my platoon. Some of my men were wounded twice. We worked with an Afghan interpreter for over a year. He was on every mission with us. He was on every fight with us. And one day we got tasked with an observation post to watch info routes from Pakistan into Afghanistan. My platoon that day rolled up onto the hill. We wondered why the Afghan villagers all around that hilltop were watching the platoon. Rolled up onto the hill. One of my trucks hit a plastic Italian TC-6 anti-tank mine. It wounded 4 of my soldiers seriously and killed somebody in my platoon. After that mission was over, during our after-action report, we found out that our interpreter, who had been with us every step of the way, someone who we thought was our friend, we learned that he was working with an Iranian IED cell in Pakistan and coordinated the placement of that mine, which killed one of my troops in a devastating attack. Tucker, just because an Afghan works with us and is friends with us does not actually mean they're safe to bring here. And this is precisely why we cannot bring 30,000 unvetted Afghan refugees to the United States of America. It's an irresponsible policy, and quite frankly, I can't believe we even have to have this conversation. American citizens have to have the priority. They have to be the priority.
Yeah, they're not, though. And something happens in the brains, particularly these middle-aged Republican leaders. Their brains go soft. Low testosterone may be part of the cause. And they decide that every dumb idea they have to kind of cringe and, oh, that's okay. You know what I mean? The governor of Arkansas is like this. The governor of Georgia, like, what is wrong with these people? Why don't you stand up for American citizens? It's not hard.
What I can't wrap my mind around, Tucker, is that we have talking heads, media personalities, and politicians trotting out 20-year-old foreign policy arguments. The idea that we have to fight them there to keep from fighting us here. What happens in Afghanistan doesn't stay in Afghanistan. Tucker, these are not foreign policy arguments. These are arguments for wars in countries at any time, in any place, for an indeterminate amount of time. Think about it. What happens in Africa? It doesn't stay in Africa. What happens in Iraq doesn't stay in Iraq. So I'm tired of these arguments. Our politicians, our leaders have to be more careful with America's sons and daughters. They're the best of us, and we need to take care of them.
Amen. There's an ocean separating us from the rest of the world. Let's use it. Sean Parnell, I appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Tucker.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Parnell for Senate, and then when DeSantis runs for president in 2024, Parnell for VP. Simple as. Sean Parnell has...
Agreed.
Sean Parnell has remarkable clarity on this. That 4-minute segment was the most clarity I've seen from any speaker this week on the situation. What we gave to Afghan was a gift. When America gives you the gift of freedom and you don't take advantage of it by creating something sustainable, you aren't suddenly owed American citizenship just because you failed to take advantage of the gift that we already gave you. That's absolutely fucking ridiculous. To the people around the world, if America gives you the gift of protectorship and you don't use it to build yourself into a sustainable, freedom-loving democracy, then please, to the people around the world, please expect to get exactly what you deserve. And it's not going to be American citizenship.
Agreed completely.
John Parnell's a great guy. All right, so we also then, moving on, we had another Biden press conference yesterday. We had one on Monday, and then we capped off the week on Friday as a lid. It was great. Let's watch one of his responses to a question that he was asked, which was not a complete lie at all.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 questions for you. The military has secured the airport, as you mentioned, but will you sign off on sending U.S. troops into Kabul to evacuate Americans who haven't been able to get to the airport safely?
We have no indication that they haven't been able to get in Kabul through the airport. We've made an agreement with the Taliban thus far. They've allowed them to go through. It's in their interest for them to go through. So we know of no circumstance where American citizens are carrying an American passport are trying to get through to the airport. But we will do whatever needs to be done to see to it they get to the airport.
And one more, Mr. President.
So,
complete lie.
Just a complete lie. So, here's from Jack Posobiec to start off with the debunking on that is it's 2021, so we're going to use apps now to determine where the safe parts of a war zone are. But here is a group of pins that were dropped for all of the Taliban checkpoints. Now, you don't have to be familiar with what the layout of Kabul is to realize that there's a lot of fucking pins on that map, and it doesn't really matter where you are. You're probably next to a checkpoint. Here's a little bit more next to the airfield. You can see the airfield up at the top here, and the major road leading to the airfield is just covered in checkpoints, as is expected. Let's see here.
And what day was that press conference on?
That was yesterday.
So like the 20th, right?
Yeah, like it was like about 24 hours ago.
Okay, so by the 20th, we had lots of video of people being killed in the streets by the Taliban. We had reports from individuals who were American citizens in Afghanistan saying that they could not get to the airport because not only the traffic of all the citizens blocking the roads being jam-packed, but also the Taliban harassing, stopping, and threatening people and preventing them from moving forward. So that's a complete lie. But also, Sky News reported yesterday, same day, by the way, that the U.S. Embassy was telling Americans and ally nation citizens to avoid the Kabul airport. Do not go to the Kabul airport. The only location where the U.S. military had security of any kind, and the only exfil point. They're saying Americans don't come to the exfil point. Maybe that's why there's 15,000 Americans still in the country, if that's even a believable number. It kind of seems like the entire country is also the reason they said that that you shouldn't go to Kabul airport is because there was a security threat. No shit. The entire country is under a security threat of the Taliban, who currently has control of the entire country and is killing people in the streets. That's why we should be sending our security forces in to save our people.
I mean, just the level of bold-faced lie there that they've not heard of any Americans having trouble getting to the airport. Like, I don't know. Are they lying? Are they callous? Are they not asking the question? Is nobody telling them? Did they tell Biden and Biden forgot? Like, I don't. You look at this going on right now, and you compare that to what happened last summer with the just horrendous violence perpetrated against the American people by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And the Democrats just completely unable to see the very real human toll, the violence, the cruelty against people. They just couldn't see it. They just completely ignored it. And you're seeing a situation which is, I don't know. In some ways it's similar. In some ways it's a little bit worse. I don't know. I guess is it better to be curb stomped by Black Lives Matter or by the Taliban? I mean, at this point, maybe on a broader scale, which I don't even know if that's true. But you see a similar situation, and again, you see the Democrats just so. I don't know. What is it? Is it inhumanity? Like I don't even know what to call it. It's almost undefinable. It's just it's so anti-empathy. It defies having a word to describe it.
I think they feel like they are above and detached from society. They don't see themselves. They have no empathy for those who are suffering because they see themselves as set apart. But also what bothers me is the people in charge of saving Americans trapped in Afghanistan are two things. First, they're lacking the situational awareness of the facts on the ground and are not actively seeking the intel. If you believe that Biden is not aware of the Americans who are saying that they cannot get to the airport, and he's unaware that his own State Department is telling them not to go to the airport at the exact same time because it's not safe. If he's not aware of that, then we have a country being led by someone who has no understanding of the facts on the ground and then thus cannot make good decisions based off that lack of information. But he's also not aware that he doesn't have information and is not actively seeking it. That is a dangerous combination. It's often happens that in war that a military leader doesn't have information, but then they usually are aware of this and are actively seeking to fill in those gaps so they then can make better decisions. He doesn't seem to care or know. Also, he is flippantly dismissing and seems unconcerned with the suffering of Americans while feeling no urgency to save them from likely torture and death. You'd think he'd have some more sense of urgency knowing what is at cost here. Maybe he doesn't feel personally at cost, but these Americans who are likely facing death and torture, for me, I have enough empathy to say this is something urgent that needs to be acted on now.
So I'm going to replay real quick what Biden just said, and then we're going to play his the Pentagon spokesperson saying the exact opposite of that less than an hour later.
We have no indication that they haven't been able to get in Kabul through the airport. We've made it.
So we have had no indication they can't get into Kabul through the airport. Now this is, I think his name's Kirby. He is the spokesperson for the Pentagon. And this is him approximately 70 minutes after Joe Biden spoke yesterday.
Austin specifically acknowledged that Americans were being beaten on their way to the airport. Can you give us any more detail about what, who these Americans are that Secretary Austin was talking about?
Courtney, we've actually been talking about this for several days here. Here at this particular podium, we know of cases, a small number that we know of. We don't have perfect visibility, but we know of a small number of cases where some Americans, and certainly, as the Secretary also said in that statement, Afghans that we want to evacuate. It wasn't just Americans that he talked about, have been harassed and in some cases beaten. We don't believe it is a very large number, and in a matter of fact, the numbers would indicate, and I've said this before, that most, by and large, most Americans who have their credentials with them are being allowed through the Taliban checkpoints and onto the gate and into the gate and onto the airfield. So by and large, most Americans are having no problems that we're aware of. Now, I have to caveat it, and I'll do it again, and I've done it every day. We are aware of sporadic cases where they aren't being allowed, where there is some harassment going on, and yes, some physical violence has occurred.
Secretary.
So Americans remain mostly unbeaten, and yes, they are aware of, sporadic cases. It's not all of them. It's just sporadic cases.
So only 92%.
Yeah, exactly. And for a group of people who are telling us how horrible life is for the Afghans and for women in particular under the same Taliban, he sure is casual about their effort to save Americans from that same threat. I mean, I don't even know how to describe the attitude that he had when he said, well, it's not just Americans, it's Afghans too. Do you not care about the Afghans? No, I don't fucking care about the Afghans. I don't know how to make that any more clear, and the reporter should have said the same fucking thing. No, I'm asking you, we're American reporters, you are the American Pentagon, I'm asking you about Americans. Why are you talking about the Afghans? That's not what we're asking you about. And he's like, so, I don't know, just incensed that she would imply, well, only Americans, when, well, don't you know the Afghans are there too? The Afghans are in danger. Come on, man. It's fucking,
ridiculous.
I don't even know. I just don't even know.
And you just have to see it from the perspective of our adversaries like China. You mean to tell me that we're going to trust the word of the Taliban, who chopped up a Afghan U.S. collaborator, chopped off all his limbs, hung him, and burned his DOD credentials into his fucking chest? We're going to trust their word to let our people through their freaking checkpoints. You mean to tell me that we can't respond with fire, force, and fury and occupy all of Kabul with our military might and kick the fucking Taliban out until we've got our people out? If we can't do that, then we sure as fuck can't secure and care for the any of our allies, let alone frickin' Taiwan. I mean, we can't respond to anything. We're literally trusting terrorists to safeguard our people to the airport to evacuate them. I mean, we are an absolute joke on the world stage. I mean, that is an understatement. I don't think there are words that can describe it better on how fucked we are on the international stage. I mean, it's just insane to me.
It will take a lot to regain our credibility and our capabilities. It's going to require more than just a president who keeps things as they are. They need to reverse the damage.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can. Frankly, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you can.
You'd have to remove basically everyone in charge and replace them in the military.
We absolutely even have a shot at it. We need to have a president that was former military, because I think Trump's issue is he didn't know how to navigate the military leadership, and I think we just have to have somebody who knows how to do that and shares our values, which is why a DeSantis would be optimal. Maybe not the most optimal, but he's currently the name out there, really the only eligible candidate. But we would have
Trump also accepted the nominations from elitist Republicans who suggested names for military leadership that actually weren't loyal, were not good military leaders. But he didn't know better.
I mean, but here's the thing too. Trusting that that electing a new president is going to solve this. Like, we have a Congress and a Senate too, or completely useless in this whole thing. This, even if we got the perfect presidential. Sorry.
Dyer's baby is pissed about this.
Yeah, they should be. Even if we had the perfect presidential candidate in place, we completely cleaned house in the military and the Senate and Congress, it would take decades to restore the confidence of our allies and the fear in our enemies that we're serious about being able to respond to protect the lives of our citizens and our international interests. There is no way. I mean,
and we don't have decades. We don't have decades.
The freaking UK is, I mean, the British Parliament is looking at us in disgust. I mean, I don't think we can fix this. I seriously don't, and I don't know where we go from here, because I don't think electing the next president if we even have that authority as the people anymore to elect our individials. I mean, I don't think it changes a whole lot.
I don't think that this is the end of the world, Krieg. I think that by the time it would take to, sorry, baby, the time it would take to get us back on track It would be a very different world, but I don't think we're at the like. There is no hope for America to exist in the future with any kind of freedoms. I think it's going to be the world that we could possibly have a new, better America in would be one that's very different than we have now, where we have China that's far more powerful, far more land, far bigger, dangerous adversary. It's definitely possible. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not even saying it's likely, because I'm not sure we have enough people who are willing to do what it would take to retake our country.
Exactly.
I don't disagree with you, Krieg, on not being able to see a path back, and that, talking about electing the next president is a little silly in the face of that, and I totally agree. But that is currently the options that we have before us, but that doesn't mean that you can't, everybody listening, just, be self-reliant. You have time. I don't know how long it is. It might be forever, but while you have the time and the resources, go ahead and work on making yourself self-sufficient so that you're prepared for whatever comes your way. And you're not like the Afghanis, where your ability to go get a latte at Starbucks is entirely 100% reliant on the American government. That was their failing. It is certainly quickly becoming our failing. But what you can do for yourself personally is not be reliant on the government to make your frappe for you, or to defend your ability to go get one.
And if you're listening, listen to Jack Posobiec. Get the F out of the cities. Get yourself.
Listen to Jack Posobiec anyways. He is so pressed. Whoever his sources are like dead on point. Like, Jack Posobiec is he's got really good sources in the White House right now. If you don't follow him on Twitter, follow him right now.
Jack Posobiec for director of the CIA, seriously.
Oh my God,
At this point.
No, we put Michael Mallison head of the CIA.
Hell yeah. No, he's got to be press secretary just so he can piss people off.
Yeah.
That's his.
Well, there's nothing to stop him from being press secretary in between. He can handle
doing both jobs. Why not do both?
Yeah,
jobs
I think he could do both.
It'd be funny.
I think he could do both. Okay, so we got another bit from Biden's press conference on yesterday, on Friday, where you guys were segueing into how our allies viewing us on the world stage now, and here is Joe Biden responding to that, and it's interesting.
Questions. AP, Zeke Miller.
Promised to leave Afghanistan, but you also promised not to help to bring out those who helped America in its war effort. We've seen these heart-wrenching images at the Kabul airport of people trying to get there, say nothing of the people who can't get to that airport. You made the commitment to get American troops out, to get American citizens out. Will you make the same commitment to those who assisted in the American war effort over the last 20 years, number one? And then number two, what is your message to America's partners around the world who have criticized not the withdrawal, but the conduct of that withdrawal, and made them question America's credibility on the world stage?
I have seen no question of our credibility from our allies around the world. I've spoken with our NATO allies. We've spoken with NATO allies, the Secretary of State. Our national security advisor has been in contact with his counterparts throughout the world and our allies, as has the general, I keep calling him a general, but my Secretary of Defense. The fact of the matter is, I have not seen that. As a matter of fact, the exact opposite I've gotten. The exact opposite thing is we're acting with dispatch. We're acting, committing to what we said we would do. Look, let's put this thing in perspective here.
I love how he ropes everyone in on the lie. I haven't heard anything about our allies being upset with us. Have you heard any? You talked to our NATO allies.
He realized YouTube's exist, right?
Yeah.
Like, people can look up these statements from British and the French government. Like we can see them criticizing Biden and saying that the pullout was being performed incompetently. I mean, that is publicly available information. Who's he lying to?
I don't know, but he's real confident in that lie. He pulls other people in on it, and then he doubles down by saying, not only was your question on false pretenses, it's literally the exact opposite of that. Our allies are extremely satisfied with our performance this week. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
He lied that our allies have lost about them not having lost confidence. They definitely have. The other countries have lost their faith and ability for us to rescue their people, and that's why multiple countries, including the Brits, the Germans, the French, are all doing their own independent operations to pull their people out, because we not only have refused to do so, but because we're telling them not to come to the airport. The Daily Mail wrote today, quote, British, French, and German special forces have been speeding into Kabul in armored vehicles to rescue their citizens, despite the huge risk from the Taliban fighters, while the U.S. forces are reportedly under strict orders to remain at the airport.
Who gave them those orders? And why are the people on the ground listening to those orders? Again, they will break every regulation in the book to take off with a commandeered C-17, but they won't. Nope. They say we're not allowed to go rescue American citizens. That's A-okay. Is there's some more bread slices so I can make the Afghan sandwiches? I will do that right away, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But you know, if they happen to commandeer a plane, well, it can't take off fucking fast enough. This is really upsetting. Very upsetting. Let's see here. So we've also had additional reports that have been additional unconfirmed reports that there was a leaked memo between the State Department and the UK and Germany that suggested America would continue securing the city, so much so that the UK was not anticipating having to leave their embassy at all. They were expecting that their embassy would be open in perpetuity, as did the Americans. I believe America was anticipating their embassy would be open in perpetuity. And at least that the Americans would maintain security long enough. We told them, again, they are our allies, and we did make a commitment to them that we would secure it long enough for them to evacuate their embassies, and we just didn't do that. We just abandoned them. It's not real great for if there's a world war again. I think that we've certainly gained confidence for our enemies. Our enemies have gained confidence in us, confidence that they can beat us, and our allies have lost all confidence in us.
What bothers me is they landed planes on an unsecured airfield. Military airfield operations 101 requires the securing of the airfield.
Yeah, that's step one of every single book, isn't it?
Yes,
clear the LZ.
You do not land assets on the ground that is not at an airport that's not secure. They even secured dirt fields more than they secured that airport. I don't understand how they failed this mission so badly. And I remember Biden saying that his backup plan for this eventuality was to have troops stationed nearby that could be flown in. Well, okay, cool. That did happen, I guess. Troops were flown in a bit late. And when they got there, what'd they do? Hide behind barbed wire and not evac people. Great plan, Biden.
So one of the most disappointing and kind of terrifying things is, we've seen it here at home for years at this point, is the left and our establishment has this inability to recognize evil for what it is. They try to be esoteric about it, play word games, or just gaslight that it's not even happening. But they have a really difficult time recognizing evil when it happens. And this is showing its ugly face again now. Our government and military leaders are clearly inept, but you would at least expect that they know who and who are not our enemies. But apparently that question is not clear-cut for the Biden administration.
Does the U.S. military consider the Taliban an enemy?
We're our focus right now. The thing we're working against right now is time and space, and we want to get as many people out of Kabul as we can in as little amount of time as we can. There are no hostile interactions right now between American forces and the Taliban.
I'm going to play that one more time so you can listen to him have a stroke. I think the question's relatively simple, but he proceeds to have a stroke instead.
Does the U.S. military consider the Taliban an enemy?
We're our focus right now. The thing we're working against right now is time and space. And
Dyer, is the Taliban an enemy?
Yes, absolutely.
Krieg, is the Taliban an enemy?
100%.
Apparently,
Oh, that's weird. You guys didn't stroke out.
Yeah, apparently Pentagon spokesman John Kirby doesn't know whether or not the terrorist group that we have been fighting against for the last 20 years, that has butchered our soldiers, has not kept any of, or barely any of our prisoners of war are actually survived, because they make a point of dismembering and torturing them. The people the terrorists who are currently in the streets killing and raping and hanging people from streetlights, they're confused whether or not those are the enemies. That should be the easiest of answers. This should not be, but it should not be surprising that Biden or his administration doesn't know what evil is. Biden couldn't even say whether or not Putin was a killer. Or at least he wasn't. He was afraid to say it to Putin's face when he was talking big a month earlier.
Well, and who has the Biden administration targeted as the greatest threat to the American public right now? As a couple of months ago, who did they say was the greatest threat to the American public right now?
A white nationalist, Trump supporters.
Yep.
Yeah, both of those they said in the same breath. By the way, I'm not conflating the two. They did. Yep. So Kirby had a Kamala-esque stroke on air when asked a very simple question that I think most Americans should know the answer to.
Yes.
Do we support the raping and killing of Islamic jihadists?
Well, is that evil?
Is that evil?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
I mean, maybe it's possible that they're worried that they don't want to piss off the Taliban, because we're literally relying on the frickin' Taliban to escort our people to the tarmac.
That's exactly what happened. He was afraid to criticize him.
Yes.
Yeah, which is
a fantastic spot for us to be in, right?
We put ourselves in a position of weakness.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a moment of confusion, by the way. He clearly doesn't know, as evidenced by the fact that our military is currently buying fuel for the evacuation from the Taliban.
Yes. Okay.
How hard would it be for them to just spike that fuel with something to destroy our planes?
Yep. So here's Kirby being asked, I think it was on Tuesday, whether or not the American military is currently buying fuel from the Taliban.
By hour. And General Taylor, British paratroopers are leaving the airport, going into Kabul to rescue and evacuate some of their citizens who are trapped, can't get to the airport because of the Taliban. Why isn't the U.S. doing that?
At this time, as I said, our main mission continues to be to secure HKIA, to allow those American citizens and other SIVs to come in and be processed at the airfield. And just to follow up, how are you fueling your planes, the C-17s that are going out? Are you now in a position that you have to buy fuel from the Taliban? The assets on HKIA, on the airfield, are what we need to maintain the operations, all operations, to support the mission.
That was a real difficult way to say, yes, we are currently purchasing fuel from the Taliban.
Fucking Christ, dude.
Yeah. Now, again, we are making an assumption here, but I think that from his response being a real non-answer there, not saying no, I think it's pretty clear to us at least that unfortunately we are in the current position that yes, we are purchasing fuel from the Taliban because they currently own all of the fuel in Kabul because they took over the country. Now, I can understand why General Hank Taylor might not want to admit that and why he probably can't admit that. But again, it is just a part of the tapestry of our current failure and the total debacle of what's going on over there. And it's part of it's one of those avoidable things, right? So had the pullout happened correctly, we wouldn't have had 15,000 Americans on the other side of the airport wall. We wouldn't have thousands and thousands of possible Afghanis, possible Taliban commandeering C-17s. We wouldn't have had a fuel crisis and not enough fuel to keep the planes in the air because it would have been planned properly. A segment that we don't have as part of the show, but I'm sure you guys have heard, is that there is a task force that Trump had set up that was specifically going to assist with getting Americans out of Afghanistan during the withdrawal. And Biden canceled that plan along with a lot of other plans. As it was described earlier in the week, yes, maybe there wasn't a great way to pull out of Afghanistan, but there were certainly different ways to pull out of Afghanistan. If you need to get your appendix out, you could either go to a doctor who could use a scalpel to get it out, or you could hand a rusty pocket knife to a drunk guy and under a bridge. Both ways are going to get your appendix out of your body, but one of them is a little more tactful than the other. And the method to pull out of Afghanistan that our military leaders and the Biden administration chose was to hand a rusty pocket knife to a drunk guy under a bridge.
Who also happens to be an Islamic extremist.
I also want to point out the value of that team that was preparing for a very specific mission. We often have special forces teams that are sent in to rescue individual people or groups of people that are behind enemy lines, POWs, such as that. And though they're trained how to do it in general, when they know they have a target, they will actually make a mock-up of the place they're going to attack. They do practice runs where they go through and they plan out every step of because they got aerial photos, they know where the enemy combatants likely will be, they know their routine, and they mock it up, they prepare for it, they go through it multiple times until everyone knows their part back to front, and it's seamless and it's effective, and that's the value of having a prepared, trained team set for a specific purpose. But that's why Trump likely set up such a team that had a goal that was going to be planning for that eventuality, and then having to remove that. Obviously, the Biden administration sent in troops with no game plan, with no leadership, with a practiced, seamless plan to follow. This is the result.
Yep. So the Biden administration clearly didn't understand what our allies were hoping that we would do there. Back in July, he said in an interview that the collapse of the Afghan army was very unlikely. He seemed to believe that the 300,000 Afghan quote-unquote soldiers were loyal to their country, would fight, and wouldn't cut and run. Trump would say, rug, nice. Fake news, rug. All right, so here's a little taste of the illustrious Afghan military.
You're not ready. You don't have a helmet on. Najib doesn't have a rifle right now. How is he ready?
It's like having 26 kids that I have to watch after. It really is.
Ready would be on the road, staged, ready to move at 8:30.
I think if they introduced drug testing to the Afghan army, we would lose probably 3/4 to maybe 80-85% of the army.
It requires telling them almost 30 times.
I just want to highlight that during the Taliban's press conference, which sounds kind of weird to say, but the Taliban's having press conferences now, they said that when they rolled up on one of the bases that the Afghan military immediately surrendered, that they were disheartened that a lot of their brothers were smoking hash and high on heroin. And, well, what did the American soldiers that were training them say? Oh, well, they're all high all day. And then when the Afghan military rolled up, well, part of the reason why they probably surrendered is because they were probably high.
Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
Come on, let's go!
Building up Afghanistan's army is one of the mainstays of the U.S. exit strategy from this war. It now stands at around 80,000 soldiers, but President Obama recently announced he wants to triple that number. These U.S. Marines are embedded tactical trainers, also known as ETTs, and their job is to mentor the fledgling Afghan army.
Check your soldiers, make sure they're good. Someone's got a helmet on backwards.
They all still got their weapons slung on their shoulders like it's not a fucking combat patrol. I know we're supposed to advise them and everything like that, but they're supposed to be able to conduct tactical operations without us. So if I wasn't standing here right now, it makes me wonder if a dude in a bright blue shirt would be going into the mountains, and he probably would be.
You get over here and you walk into a whole squad of A&A smoking hashish.
Assalamu alaikum.
They don't understand that the use of drugs, it affects the way that they accomplish their mission. ultimately it affects their ability to protect their nation and get Afghanistan on its feet.
Assalamu alaikum. Singa, Juri.
Who's smoking hashish around here?
You're smoking hashish in the morning.
Smoking hash.
Great. You're gonna find them.
Soldiers come out without helmets. Soldiers come out missing a lot of gear. There's inspections that need to be done before we step off on a patrol. Right now, we're not going to go on the patrol.
Tell him to come over here. Come here. What kind of...
You're not...
So, it's interesting that
only the best.
One of the key issues is that that the American trainers highlighted as like, well, they're high all the time, and then the Taliban rolls up, and in their first press conference they say, oh yeah, we rolled up, and the Afghan military folded up because they were all high. It's kind of like I don't know, maybe there's some correlation there. I'm not real smart, so maybe I'm missing something, but it seems to be correlated.
So, from what I know, the troops on the ground were reporting up to their leadership, this army is not capable of defending itself. It is not capable of protecting this country. It's not even capable of doing basic things. We couldn't teach them basic maintenance skills to maintain even our simplest equipment. So I don't believe that our mid-level leadership, our commanders, our colonels, they didn't know this, but I guess I have to believe one of two things. Either they lied to their leadership, or our president and the administration just didn't accept the truth and decided to move forward anyways.
Yeah, it's weird because, Biden was so sure, at least what he said, that, there's no way that, they're going to collapse. Everything's going to be fine. It's all going to be honky-dory. But, he's the president, and the whole thing is that this video is from the Obama era. So it's like, he's got to know that this is the kind of shit that was going on. And did he know that all of this was happening? Did he really not think that this was going to be the result? And if he knew that this was happening and he chose to do this anyway, what is the motive here?
Where a lot of the where a lot of the deaths came from, the combat deaths came from, in the last 10 years?
Yeah, well, let me preface that, Derek. So you're talking about the Afghani combat deaths, correct? Is that what you're about to talk about? So some of the stats on that before Dyer says what he was about to say is it has been widely circulated this week by a lot of war pigs on the right that, well, there's not been any U.S. combat deaths in the last 18 months, and that's not to mention all of the people who were maimed or had PTSD from what's going on over there, but don't worry about them. And one of the reasons why we haven't had any combat deaths in the last 18 months is because Trump made a deal with the Taliban that we were going to leave, and then we didn't. So this idea that, well, we can just stay there in perpetuity because we haven't had any combat deaths. Well, the reason why we weren't having any combat deaths is because we were going to leave. Now, there's been a number that's cited as about 50 to 60,000 Afghan soldiers that have died in the last 20 years, fighting for their country, ostensibly. And this number has been touted as this big, large number, like, oh, you can't say that the Afghans are cowards. You can't say that they're willing to die for their country. This is how many people died. Afghans died fighting for their country already. And when you now 60,000 sounds like a lot, right? So you divide that up by 20 years, and it's not actually an absurd number of people to die. Also, given the fact that Afghanistan has been in a civil war for 20 years, and well, longer than that, and then after you get through all those steps, if you're still like, well, 2,000 Afghans a year dying for their country, that's an awful lot. Well, now you need to explain to me, why shouldn't Afghans die for Afghanistan? Why is there this assumption that it's wrong for Afghans to die for Afghanistan? That doesn't make any sense to me at all, because we sure as hell have a lot of fucking Americans that died for Afghanistan. Why the fuck should it be weird or strange or a heroic accomplishment that so many Afghans died fighting for Afghanistan? Now, Dyer, I think you're gonna try to color in a little bit of the the categories of death, and that, you know, maybe some of those 2,000 deaths per year from the Afghan army, maybe some of them are avoidable. Take it away.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you made that caveat, because that really is a good context before getting to my statement. A large percentage of the Afghanistan army deaths were from insider threats. They would bring in people who would work with them for a while and then shoot each other or throw grenades into tents. They actually had a Taliban meeting with one of our generals, and as soon as our general landed on the ground, one of their fighters opened fire on our general and actually hit him in the chest, but he was wearing a armor plate. So one of the biggest threats to the Afghan army was the Afghan army. Most of the deaths are from the Afghan army being attacked from the inside. So a lot of the deaths from Americans were from Americans being killed by insider threats that the troops that they were training would kill them.
Yeah, and I can add to that too. When we were getting ready to deploy, and we did what was called NTC rotation. So we went out to California, and for a month we drilled to prepare to deploy to Afghanistan. And the biggest talk was not, oh, well, how are we going to defeat the Taliban? How are we going to defeat our Op 4? No, it was, there's going to be green on blue attacks. There's going to be insider attacks. There's going to be guys who say they work for the Afghan army, who we are trying to train and prepare to take over their country, that are going to turn around, shoot you, or throw a grenade at you. And you have to be ready for that, because you are far more likely to die that way than you are to die getting blasted by a freaking Taliban AK-47. And I mean, dude, like... But hey, you know, Afghan army, they were totally ready to defend their country to the last freaking.
Every one of them is a future American, right? Every one of them is a future American.
Exactly.
So how many Afghan military that is okay to die for the country of Afghanistan? What is the right amount of Afghan soldiers dying for Afghanistan? It's something that only they can decide. Well, you can't tell me, because it's they're like, what was worth it to them. What you can't tell me is that any amount of Americans are required to die for Afghanistan.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what they kept telling us is that, you know, oh, we're here to kill the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, so that way Al-Qaeda doesn't come back, so they don't, you know, fly planes into more of our frickin' buildings. But, like, Al-Qaeda has been largely irrelevant for a really long fucking time. Like with the death of Osama bin Laden, they all, you know, either dispersed or joined ISIS. And then, you know, the rest of them who were actual Afghan nationals probably joined the fucking Taliban. Like, I mean, I don't know.
Like, basically the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're still going to try to kill us. It doesn't matter if we're there or if we're here. They're still going to try to kill us.
Time frame.
Like, because we've pissed them off. We've created feuds with the Afghan people. And if you've been there at any point in time in Afghanistan, you know that an Afghan feud, like, you're fucked. They're gonna come after you till they die.
The irony is that 9/11 was caused by a failure in immigration controls, and what they're doing right now is response to this withdrawal is to have no immigration controls.
Yeah, you know, it's in order to avenge 3,000 killed on 9/11, we've now abandoned 5 times that in Kabul. And in order to better protect America from immigration threats, we had a C-17 take off with 800 potential terrorists on it, and they're going to get medals in their chest for that. Let's see here. So, who you were asking earlier, you know, did Biden not know? You know, well, he might have known at one time, and I think he forgot. But certainly, you would think that Milley and Lloyd Austin would know, because Milley and Lloyd Austin have been working on Afghanistan for at least a decade. You would think that they would know. And here is General Flower Power here. Here he is discussing what he thought about the Afghan military. This is from this week.
The time frame of a rapid collapse That was widely estimated and ranged from weeks to months and even years following our departure. There was nothing that I or anyone else saw that indicated a collapse of this Army and this government in 11 days.
So Milley has just admitted that he has no ability to rationally judge battlefield conditions or gauge effective combat strength of enemy or allied units. He is unequivocally unfit to be in charge of the military. I'm not saying I could do that, but if you're going to be the general, like he's the chief of the staff, right? Or he's like the head of all of the branches.
Yes.
He can't judge effective fighting strength. He can't judge how quickly battlefield conditions can change. He can't, like, you're talking about somebody who he's in a position where during a world war, he would need to be maintaining and having input on multiple battlefields the size of nations all across the world. And he can't even handle one of them. He didn't see any possibility that it would play out like that. No, he has just, what he should have said was, wow, I had no idea this was going to happen. Obviously, I'm unable to judge battlefield conditions, and I'm going to step down now. Instead, he was just like, well, I don't think anybody could have seen it coming. I mean, obviously, I'm the smartest military guy here because I've got all these stars on my chest. So, it must have just been impossible, and, nobody could have seen it coming. No, this is him admitting that he is unfit to be in charge, and he should step down immediately. The one caveat I have for that is if instead of stepping down, he would like to go fly to Kabul and be on the ground in the airport taking charge of the situation. That is his one redeeming quality. When he gets back, then he can be relieved of command. But that is the only way that he stays in command for a day longer, is if he goes down on the ground and tries to fix that himself. Because
I also want to point out what he said was completely false. There was unclassified reports of recommendations saying that this was likely to happen. And even on the classified side, I tell you, it's very, very clear that it was expected to happen and happen quickly because there was no faith in the ANA. But he was too busy reading Ibram X. Kendi's book talking about how white people are evil and how I shouldn't exist, my kids shouldn't exist, and he was so worried about the white rage. Apparently, he has no time to actually focus on his job as a military technician.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
We reprimanded Patton for slapping a soldier because he had shell shock. Wow. Nothing for this guy, nothing for this fucking complete disgrace of the uniform that he fucking wears. Seriously, this guy should be paraded through the streets as the disgusting, horrible, inept moron that he is, and he should be drummed out of the military effective immediately, as should the rest of military high command that had anything to do with this farce. I mean, this is a disgrace. And just wait until we start getting videos when the Taliban start getting, a little bit antsy because we're not getting out fast enough, and they start capturing and torturing our people to money or weapons or whatever.
Yeah,
Jimmy Carter.
More weapons?
And
90 billion wasn't enough.
Yeah. And Dyer has no opinions on what I'm about to say, but Milley should not, after being relieved of command, should be jailed. He should be tried by military tribunal and end with that, him being in jail for the rest of his life. What he did was so egregious failure that he should be jailed for it. And since military stuff is different than regular law, I think it would fit perfectly fine with how military conducts jail stuff. So, let's see here. So, but we're not, as per General Milley, as we're about to watch, we don't have time for criticizing him. And, we really should wait to do that until after he's completed fucking this whole thing up. Daring it, he doesn't really have time to listen to your criticism. Let's hear him talk about that.
In Afghanistan. Since then, the security situation rapidly degraded. Today, the situation is still very dangerous, very dynamic, and very fluid. And all of us can be proud for the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines who are executing this mission. They are currently in harm's way. That needs to be our focus. There'll be plenty of time to do AARs, but right now, our mission is to secure that airfield, defend that airfield, and evacuate all those who have been faithful to us. There'll be many postmortems on this topic, but right now is not that time. Right now, there are troops at risk, and we are the United States military, and we fully intend to successfully evacuate all American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan. All American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan. They are our priority number one. In addition, we intend to evacuate those who have been supporting us for years, and we're not going to leave them behind.
So, General Milley, you just wrote a speech for civilians and you used AAR rather than saying after action report.
Yes.
Come on.
So we don't have, we're busy. There's an active situation. So, in order to, because everybody's in danger, in order to, keep them as safe as possible, we need to leave somebody who's incompetent and unfit for duty in charge. No, the way that, because the situation's not over. He's correct about that. The situation is far from over. I mean, they're talking about being there till the 31st. So you got another week and a half of this, at least. And I think that how this plays out over the course of the next 10 days is wildly different if you have somebody else in charge. Now, the problem is that you take Milley out and who's below him? Well, somebody that Milley had confidence in. So how far down the chain do you have to go before you get to somebody?
Just send me. For God's sake, send me.
Operation Sundial. But yeah, this, everybody's got criticisms, but, there'll be plenty of time for after actions and postmortems after I've completed fucking this all up and getting hundreds of Americans and servicemen killed and all that and losing billions and billions of dollars of equipment. There'll be time for that later. We don't have time for that right now. Now is the time for that. Not after we've failed. Now is the time for that, because this, I think Krieg was alluding to it a second ago. This can and likely will get a lot worse. You thought this week was a roller coaster ride. Wait till next week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need a freaking after-action review to understand that your leadership is completely ineffectual and counterintuitive to the livelihood of our fucking people. You should be removed immediately. You should resign, at least with some dignity. But if not, you should be removed from your post immediately and replaced with somebody with some competence.
Yep. Now, our last little bit here is from Lloyd Austin, and it is a question about all of the military equipment, particularly the airplanes that we left behind and the Taliban has now inherited. I proposed my theory last week that Lloyd Austin, who was on the board of Raytheon 11 months ago and had to have a special exemption to be allowed to be the Secretary of Defense, because we actually have a law in America where if you sat on the board of a weapons company, you can't just revolving door into being in charge of military assets that would then be being purchased from the company that you just left, because
that just seems to make too much sense.
It would just be kind of corrupt intent there. But Joe Biden wanted him there anyways because he was black, and so Congress gave him a special exemption so that he could break the law. An exemption.
For the reparations?
Yeah, an exemption from breaking the law doesn't mean that you didn't break the law. It just means that we're not going to punish you for it. So he is illegally in that position because he was on the board of Raytheon 11 months ago. Now, I floated the theory last week that one of the reasons why we left so much equipment behind is because, Lloyd wanted to pad the bottom line of Raytheon and some of the other weapons companies. Now, that sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? I want you to watch Lloyd Austin's face here when he's asked about the military aircraft that were left behind, and is he going to do anything about that? Watch his face here.
Austin, how many U.S. taxpayer-funded military aircraft have been flown out of the country, and what are you doing to get those back? We've heard of Afghan pilots taking those planes to third countries. And General Milley, you talk about the intelligence reports, and you said there wasn't anything suggesting 11 days that Kabul would fall. But you do mention there were some reports suggesting it could fall apart in weeks. If so, why did you abandon the Bagram airfield? Why did U.S. military pull out, given the uncertainty?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Jen, in terms of the aircraft that have been flown out that you mentioned earlier, I have received reports of a number of aircraft that were flown into Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. Exactly how many, I don't have firm numbers on. In terms of what we're doing about them currently, right now, Jen, we're focused on the airfield and getting people out safely. And so we're going to take that issue up at a later date. And we're going to continue to try to gain greater fidelity on the issue as well.
Did you guys see that creepy smile when he was...
Play it again.
Let's see her.
Heard of Afghan pilots taking those planes to third countries. And General Milley, you talk about the intelligence...
Jen, in terms of...
Right here.
Yeah, I saw that.
What a sick fuck.
Do you see that? Do you see that little smile there? What on earth is that other than duping delight?
What is funny about this?
So, as I said, my theory is that he made an intentional choice to leave assets behind because that was going to boom the military-industrial complex for a few years. And when asked about, we left a lot of airplanes behind, are you doing anything about that? He just can't help but smile because, well, if you guys, I know duping delight's kind of one of those like armchair psychologist things, but it is a real phenomenon. And when you're lying to somebody, duping delight is a micro smile that you have that you just really can't hide. Your brain is happy that you get delight out of tricking somebody, and so you just can't help but smile. And he has this really weird kind of asymmetric sly smirk there, and asymmetric facial features tend to imply contempt for the person that you're speaking to. And so he has this, at a completely inappropriate moment, this weird asymmetric smile, which, maybe I'm reading into it, maybe I'm confirmation bias, but I think he's up to something. I think that's very clear. Anyways, do you guys have anything else before we close out this one of our shorter shows?
Shorter. Okay, I want to point out that I am very sorry to our entire audience because we lie to them every single show. We tell them it's a 2-hour long show, and it never is.
It is like every now and then. I mean, it's like
only by accident.
Yeah, it's like 7% the correct length.
So mostly peaceful shows then. All right. Well, I think that's it for me. How about you, Krieg?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, at the end here with the whole thing with Lloyd Austin and, him grinning because he knows his military-industrial complex buddies are going to make some fat stacks. Maybe that's really the key to why they're doing all of this, because the longer that we hold out, the more that the people are going to get anxious and going to cry, well, maybe we should go back to save our people. And there'll be calls. I mean, Romney's already doing it. Yep. We got to go back. We got to go save them. And fucking, Raytheon gets to spend another couple fucking trillion on taxpayer credit.
Yep.
So,
and
if they deploy me to Afghanistan, I'm gonna be so pissed. They just closed the base. Almost out.
There was last night on Tucker Carlson. He spoke to Glenn Greenwald, and we're not going to talk much about it. It's the end of the show, but I would encourage you guys to go take a look at it. They proposed what seems to be a pretty plausible idea that the CIA has just full control of CNN, and that one of the reasons why you're seeing the media, one of the strange things that happened this week was the media kind of turned on Biden. And there was a question as to why would they finally turn on Biden? What was the deal? Biden's done so many horrific things in just 7 months. The economy is a disaster. The border is just a flood. Why this? And it's because he ended a war, and they didn't like him ending the war. You'll remember the media so vicious to Trump, but when he sent missiles into Syria, I believe, all of a sudden, it was, he's so presidential. So amazing. Good job, Trump. So there's a lot of people. Again, I know oh man, this is so conspiratorial. It's Alex Jones. Name me a few things where Alex Jones has been wrong on, but you can't because there's just none. There is people at play here that are moving very large chess pieces around, and they are just stomping out hundreds of thousands of people at a time every time they make a move. If you think that there is not an intentional attempt to keep us at war, to spend money and to continue extracting from you, the American taxpayer, to make sure that you're not able to do any of the stuff that you want to do, to make sure that you have as little freedom as possible, well, you are living in a fantasy land.
We could do an entire show on the topic you just brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess
Folks,
so instead of responding to that, I think I was going to say good night.
So, Krieg, you have one last thing to say?
Yeah, folks, if you think this shit's conspiracy, go look up the declassified documents that we faked the Gulf of Tonkin to get ourselves in the last fucking Afghanistan. So, yeah, go look at that shit and what our government is capable of doing to spend more money and sacrifice more of our blood for their fucking pockets.
Yep.
For their treasure.
So,
all right.
Krieg, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you on. Again, you are invited anytime you want. Just let me know.
Thank you, Kai. Glad to be here. Glad to be back with you guys. It's been rough. We bought a new house, so yeah, I'm glad to be back on with you guys.
It's been too long, man. Don't wait the same amount of time next time to come on. All right?
Yeah. All right, we'll do. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
No problem. All right, see ya. Dire Wolf out.
All right, Chaviz signing off.